Streaming from Oklahoma's own digital studio, this is the State of the State, the future of Oklahoma.
Welcome and thank you for joining us here for this very special edition of News on 6 and News 9. I am Jonathon Cooper along with our political analyst, Scott Mitchell. We're live from the fourth floor rotunda of the Oklahoma State Capitol. Today is the State of the State, Governor Kevin Stitt's final State of the State as governor of Oklahoma. He's been in office since 2019. We're going to take a look back at what he's accomplished and his goals for his next legislative session. We have team coverage with the state's largest team of reporters standing by. The governor is expected to deliver his speech at 12:30 this afternoon. We will bring you an expanded statewide new newscast as well on News 9 in Oklahoma City and on News on 6 in Tulsa. And then Scott and I will have a full analysis, both pre and post speech, and we're going to have a lot of guests as well. I want to welcome everybody in for this very special YouTube edition analyzing this great speech by Governor Kevin Stitt. Scott, thanks for being here. First off, let's chat about the background of this speech. Tell us about the importance of the State of the State here in the state of Oklahoma.
Well, it's because the Constitution says it.
Right.
We're going to be doing sort of like Civic 101 today because we want people to understand precisely why this is happening. And then we'll talk about the who and the why and the when and all of that. But the Constitution says the governor has to come here. He has to deliver the State of the State. He has to do some things that are constitutionally required, and that's what today is all about. And not only the governor, but the legislature convenes today. They only get to be here from the 1st of February to the end of May. That's because the voters a few years ago said, you got to be out of there by May 31st at 5 o'clock. So there's a lot of pressure right now to get everything done. So this is the governor who's also the co-chair, actually the chair of the National Governors Association. We may be talking about some discussions about what he may be doing next year at this time. But nonetheless, he's here to lay out his vision and probably is going to be talking a little bit about his legacy. He was not really expected to be the governor 8 years ago. There were a couple of other folks that were favorites before him. So it's going to be Legacy Day, his vision for the future, and there will be so many people out here today, a lot of them thinking about how they'd like to be in Kevin Stitt's position next year.
Definitely. And, we want to do this, too, for people that may not follow politics very closely. This is something that, you may just see the State of the State on TV. You don't follow it very closely, but we want to give you some background about why this is important and what this could mean for you, because a lot of the things that are decided here have an everyday impact on Oklahomans across the state of Oklahoma. As you mentioned, Governor Kevin Stitt has been in office since 2019. Because of term limits in the state of Oklahoma, this is his final State of the State speech. Like you said, it could be a legacy speech as well. In the background of all of this is the governor's race. There are a lot of candidates that are looking to be the next governor of the state of Oklahoma. We will address that, of course, during this as well. We're also going to talk about just some of the topics that he's going to talk about today. We have a good idea of what he may talk about, and there could be some things that surprise us as well. So that's why we're here. That's why we're going to chat about it. The speech is expected to start around 12:45 and go to 1:30. In the past, the speech has gone about 30 to 45 minutes, and this will be unique, like you said, because this will be a capstone speech for him. Our own Haley Hetrick had a chance to speak with the governor last week. She asked him about this final speech, and this is what he had to say about his final message to Oklahomans in his final year in office.
I'm always trying to keep those below reoccurring revenue, and it's worked really well, and that'll be a similar message this year.
What is your message to Oklahomans going into your final year?
I hope they've been proud of what's happened over the last 7 years, electing me as their governor, the businessman governor, the guy that came from the private sector, that had never been in politics.
And what he said there, the businessman governor, this comes after President Trump was elected in 2016, and that was a really big thing back in 2018 when he was first elected. The outsider. Yeah. And how has that kind of impacted his governance over the past 7 years or so, being that outsider and being a businessman too from the Tulsa area?
Well, it's interesting. There has been some friction of note over the past few years, even though the Republicans, they have supermajorities in everything. But sometimes there's a difference between, let's just call it style, okay? And the style of the governor sometimes has chafed some of the legislative leadership. Not so much of the ones that are here now, but prior, there's been some differences in how the governor, his style, the businessman style. You know, Governor Stitt never cast a vote. I mean, as a city councilman or as a House member or a senator, any of those things. Most of these folks that are out here in leadership, you know, work their way up through the process, learning the art of compromise. And that's not something that the governor's really had a vision for his future, and he's been like a bull in a china closet. He charges forward, and he gets a lot of things done. But that has been style. It's not so much ideology, except in a couple of places. Obviously, over the years, the disagreements with our tribes and some discussions about just how agencies should be run. But other than that, we've seen he's a historical figure in Oklahoma history because of the changes that he's made, some of the decisions that he's made, and I'm not sure that the total outsider aspect is going to continue in to the next governor. And I don't think. Well, I'll tell you what I think it is. I think we'll see a campaign run on cultural war issues, not nuts and bolts, and we'll see where all this goes. But nonetheless, he has been a different style than, say, Governor Henry or Governor Fallon. They worked their way up through the process. This governor came from the outside with no experience whatsoever in those sorts of institutions.
Yeah, you know, and he came from the Jinx area over there in Tulsa, like you said, didn't have a lot of political experience as well. And we're also hearing what could be next for him. You know, he's still a young man relative in the political circle. Is this done for him in politics, you think? Is he going to explore maybe something national on the national level? What could be next for Governor Kevin Stitt after this term as governor?
Well, the sky's the limit. Now, the guy is going to go out with very high ratings. He's going out without any, major scandals. And right now, he's the chair of the National Governors Association. So he has a national platform. He also has done a little pushback on the Trump administration, especially since he's become NGA chair. And so right now, the Trump administration they aren't at their peak in terms of polling. So there may be a little bit different style, and there are people talking out here about that very thing, Jonathan, about what may be next for Kevin Stitt. And look, a Midwestern governor in a red state who's very popular, intelligent, and knows all this stuff about business. There are people that have less experience than Kevin Stitt who've run for president.
Right. We also want to highlight again just this statewide aspect of this. We have reporters that are based in Oklahoma City, reporters that are based in Tulsa, and reporters that cover this every single day. We have Haley Hetrick. You may see her reporting from the Capitol. She is here every single day talking to lawmakers and really getting a behind-the-scenes look at things. We have Deanne Stein here, Alex Cameron from our News on 6 Washington Bureau, News 9 Washington Bureau, and Marie Bryant is here as well. So in today's coverage, they're going to be around talking to protesters, talking to lawmakers, and getting reaction that we may not be able to get because we're sitting right here, but they're going to be all around talking to everybody. We do want to check in with them here shortly. We actually have Haley Hetrick that is live in the Rotunda. Haley, you talked to Governor Kevin Stitt just on Friday. What did he tell you, and what can you expect from his speech today?
Hey guys, well, it's obviously a big year from him. One of the big things he says is he's wanting to build on the momentum that he's garnered over the last 7 years and close out a few big ticket items in this final year. Two of the main things we discussed were education and welfare. He's obviously looking at those literacy programs, some things that both Senate leaders and House leaders have also talked about. We don't see great scores when it comes to reading in the state, so we definitely want to look at boosting that, and that will be one of the things we expect him to talk about today. But one of the more controversial things that he talked about when it comes to education, he says one of his top goals is allowing the state superintendent to become an appointed position instead of one that's voter chosen. We saw that Governor Kevin Stitt appointed State Superintendent Lyndall Fields when Ryan Walters stepped down, and he says he wants governors in the future to have that same power. So he told me he is planning to ask the legislature to make that happen this year. And then we saw the welfare executive order that the governor put out just a few weeks ago. He's wanting to build on that as well. He told me that the state just can't afford a budget with the amount of people that are on Medicaid. If that grows at all, it just could be hurtful to the state budget. So he's going to be asking lawmakers to look at that issue as well. Of course, there's a lot of other things on his list. We always talk about sports betting as a possibility. So excited to see what he's talking about in his speech. I'll send it back to you guys.
All right, Haley Hetrick live for us here at the state capitol. Emery Bryan covers a lot of political issues in the Tulsa area in eastern Oklahoma. Emery is also here. Emery, what are you expecting to hear from Governor Kevin Stitt's speech today?
Well, everything that we're hearing too is also that he will be talking a lot about education. Remember, he's got this is not just going to be a victory lap for him most likely, but it will be what he wants to lay out for the coming year. He has a lot that he wants to get done ever since his inauguration. Well, really since he was campaigning. Remember, he was talking about making Oklahoma a top 10 state. That has been a way to both claim credit and also for his critics to say, well, we're not top 10 in that. Education certainly has taken a hit over this time. So that's one reason we're expecting him to say a lot about what he wants to do with education in this final year. Not just getting this state superintendent to be an appointed position, but make some progress that has been very, very difficult over the last few years. You know, when he first started in office, Governor Stitt was talking a lot about general increases for education. We need teacher raises, that sort of thing. Over time, that tone has shifted a little bit from general increases to we need maybe targeted pay raises for teachers, performance-based pay raises. Maybe instead of just general funding for all students, maybe we need to go to a system where he famously says that we're going to fund students, not systems. So those dollars are now following students to a large degree. And he wants even more focus on that, a higher cap on the funding that goes to that system. So we're going to hear more about that. Of course, all these state agencies are also asking for more money. He's asked for a flat budget, but of course, things cost more than they used to. State departments have started out saying we need more money. Well, state revenue is down. These legislators will have less money to spend as it looks like right now. So that's going to be a big challenge. Governor Stitt's always talking about lowering taxes. That's going to be tough in a budget year where things are so tight. Expenses are up, tax revenue is down. Of course, this whole place here, everything, there are lots of distractions, but everything, the bottom line is about the budget because everything requires money. So that's going to be a topic no matter what with Governor Stitt consistently throughout all of these State of the State addresses, his inaugural, even when he was running, wants to make government more efficient, lower taxes. He's going to continue that drive for sure, I'm sure, Jonathan.
All right, Emery Bryan live for us here at the Capitol. He talked about the budget a lot there, and it's something that the governor has talked a lot with the budget. It is a tighter year this year. Explain to people why that is. You know, they have a set amount they can spend, and that's what they can spend. So without finding other revenue sources. So why is it a tighter year for the budget?
All the COVID money's gone. I mean, they have been using the COVID money. Some people call it ARPA. You remember those terms. That's gone. And things are just a little bit tighter. And the Medicare, Medicaid issue is the elephant in the room. We're even hearing some discussions from some of the leadership about, you know, the public put Medicaid expansion in the Constitution through initiative petition, a state question. And now there's some folks talking about, hey, it's just so inflexible, we may have to take it out of the Constitution. Now, that's going to be a heck of a fight, okay? But, and also with the education budget, there's going to be a lot of discussion about, we are not in school as much in Oklahoma as we are surrounding states. And even business groups are now saying from the education aspect of it that we've just got to do better in literacy. That's going to take money, okay? And so there are so many people out there right now, Jonathan, that they've all got their hands out. The governor wants a flat budget. There's not the sort of revenue, just, you know, the Biden gift of the COVID money for all those years. It's gone. And so now they're going to have to really sharpen their pencil. Some of these agencies are out here asking for sums that in no way are they going to get. So there's going to be a lot of friction about this.
All right, and you mentioned the budget. Haley talked to the governor on Friday about that, so let's hear what he had to say about it as well.
You know, for the last 7 years, this will be my 8th session, I've talked about we can't spend every dime that we have. And because of that, it's led to our largest savings account ever. And it's just like in our own personal budget. You can't keep increasing expenses because revenue doesn't always just go up in a straight line.
Revenue does not go up in a straight line. I mean, he's saying it right there that there's only a certain amount you can spend, and that's what they have planned. We want to go to Alex Cameron now. He is in Washington, D.C. If you watch a lot of News 9 or News on 6, you see his reporting every day from the nation's capital. And Alex, I want to ask you, from your perspective, from the national lawmakers' perspective, do they pay attention to this state of the state? What can you expect to see from what Governor Kevin Stitt has to say today?
Hey, Jonathan. Yeah, I reached out to our members' offices today, and I think there are some that will have representatives at the speech today, which is pretty common. But I don't know how much they will pay attention to specifically what he says. One, because it is his final year, so they might be more apt to be paying attention to what the next governor is going to say. But also, let's keep in mind that generally it's the states reacting to what the federal government is doing. It's, states having to set their policies based on what's happening here in Washington, D.C. So, I will be interested to hear, what the governor has to say, if anything, about what's going on in Minnesota. You mentioned the, kind of negative comment he made about the administration's, the ICE agents and how things were going down in Minneapolis. And that was, he made that comment in his role as chairman of the National Governors Association. I wouldn't really expect that, in his final state of the state today that he's going to say anything really negative about the Trump administration. I would expect, if anything, that he would talk about how they've tried to cooperate and how they appreciate what the administration's doing here in Washington. Although, as Scott mentioned, those things do have a real impact. I think it's worth noting that just a couple of years ago, 40 cents out of every dollar that the state of Oklahoma spent came from the federal government. It's probably not the same right now. It's probably down closer to 30 cents out of every dollar. But the state of Oklahoma, more than most states, depend on federal money. So they're really paying attention a lot to what's happening here, no doubt about it. So the situation with the One Big Beautiful Bill and the cuts in Medicaid. I mean, you saw that the Oklahoma Health Care Authority has requested $500 million in additional funding this year because they're not sure they're going to be able to make all the payments. So those things have a real impact, and so it'll be interesting to hear if he makes any reference to that sort of thing. But as far as cooperating with the administration, I wouldn't be surprised to talk about that. Hear him talk about how they've sent the National Guard here, and the Guard's been here for the last month and a half, nearly 2 months, trying to help make Washington a safer place, and the way that they've cooperated with federal agents in the administration's immigration roundup. So, I wouldn't look for any kind of critical comments today in his role as mayor, or role as governor, but more about how it's been great, and the things they've done everything they can to try and take the federal policies and implement them at the local level, and how good that's been for Oklahomans.
All right, Alex Cameron live for us in Washington, D.C. Of course, he's following the partial government shutdown right now. House expected to vote on that today, so you're going to be busy there, Alex, covering all of that and seeing if that has any impact here in Oklahoma as well.
For just
yeah,
a
of course, of course.
Hey, Alex, you've covered this place before you went to D.C. a lot, and you know that I just was struck by the fact that the governor probably won't say anything about Trump administration, but a big applause line right now is going to be, and in D.C., they're doing blank to you, right? I mean, so you're going to have people that are going to be campaigning. The government, it is not popular to say nice things about D.C., but you got to thread that needle and make sure that the criticism of D.C. does not involve Donald Trump. It's like running open field, except you got to be between the hash marks, right?
Well, I think you're right, and I think he probably won't lose any points. He won't lose any points by criticizing Congress for shutting the government down. You can blame it on Democrats anyway, but that stuff does have an impact on Oklahoma. We saw the SNAP funding go away, and so that sort of thing does make a difference. So I'm sure that he might be able to get a few applause lines by saying, "Come on, Washington, get your act together."
All right, Alex, thank you so much for taking a few minutes and joining us on this stream. We'll check in with you later, too, maybe after the speech, too, seeing what the governor says. And if he mentions the federal government as well. Something that Alex talked about was ICE. And that seems to be a big topic nationwide right now, as you can expect. Governor Kevin Stitt made some national headlines, actually, as the chair of the National Governors Association. He made a comment that says Americans don't like what they're seeing right now. Some on the far right here in Oklahoma, if you look at his Twitter feed, at his Facebook page, they didn't like seeing that, saying that's what we voted for. But others, they see a more streamlined approach, mainstream on that as well. And we have a little bit about what Governor Kevin Stitt said on CNN last week that kind of sparked all this.
Now Americans are asking themselves, what is the end game? What is the solution? And, we believe in federalism and state rights, and nobody likes feds coming into their state. And so what's the goal right now? Is it to deport every single non-U.S. citizen? I don't think that's what Americans want. We have to stop politicizing this. We need real solutions on immigration reform. And, I think that the president has to answer that question. He is a deal maker, and he's getting bad advice right now. The president needs to let the American people, what is the solution? How do we bring this to conclusion? And I think only the president can answer that question because it's complicated. We have to enforce federal laws, but we need to know what is the end game. And I don't think it's to deport every single non-U.S. citizen.
He's getting bad advice right now. That was one of his statements. That's the one that really got a lot of headlines nationally. So what was your reaction when you heard that?
Well, it's one of those thread the needle type things, right? And by the way, he did deport Kristi Noem and Greg Bovino. So that's the sort of thing that the president's actually engaged on this. I don't know how much change there's going to be. But you walk into this building this morning, if you came in on those south steps, there's a tremendous amount of protesters out there. And I think that you're seeing Republicans start to push back on this, saying we don't like the way this looks. This is not how it works. Most notably, of course, Oklahoma City's Mayor David Holt is with the the Mayor's Council. They've been very, very critical of this. So now the Republican dam is sort of breaking. You're starting to see people start to criticize the president a little more forcefully. When the governor did that, I like to fell out of the chair. It was one of those you just, wow, that happened. And so that's starting to happen. You're starting to see people maybe fueling some of this discussion about Kevin Stitt maybe looking at the next office being over 50 states. So this is a big issue. It is hurting Republicans. What the pollsters say, we may run into a couple of them out here today. And so, it was kind of shocking, but he's been mild with it. The next day he was tweeting, the president's doing what needs to be doing now. But again, when you're dealing with D.C. and President Trump and you're Republican, you have to handle it with kid gloves.
And you mentioned that, and shortly after that came out, he released a press release, and he said that he applauds Border Czar Tom Homan's leadership this week, really praised the president for sending Tom Homan to Minnesota to help with the situation there. He says we must uphold the law and protect Americans. Oklahoma's partnership with federal agents has led to us to turn over more than 1,250 criminal immigrants in or passing through our state for the past year, the third largest immigration apprehension in the nation. And part of that is on the interstate system with some of the CDL licenses, finding drivers that they say are here illegally and turning those over to the federal government as well. So it seems like there's more to that. We want to check in now with Deanne Stein. She is covering, actually we do not have Deanne, but she is covering She's not ready yet, but she is covering some of the protests. You mentioned it. I walked in this morning about 9 o'clock, and we saw several protesters out there. They're protesting a lot of different things, but one of the big ones was ICE and them out there. So every time we do this, if you've ever been to the state capitol for a State of the State, there's people that are going to protest. Look at the right on your screen there. That is where they're doing it. We see some people standing out front. Not a massive amount of people, but a good number. And we do see state troopers that are out there monitoring the situation. And ICE is a big topic nationwide. If you watched the Grammys last night, ICE, a big topic there. So it's a big national issue, and I expect it's something that the governor will speak about today in his speech.
He probably will. He probably will.
Ready now.
I'm not sure he'll be talking about Bad Bunny. We had a really good night last night. And listen, this issue, not to be joking about it, Bad Bunny's going to be doing the Super Bowl next weekend, and he's elevating this issue. It is going to be an issue that's going to stick to this administration the way they handle it for months.
Okay, I hear we do have Deanne Stein. Now let's check out with Deanne. Deanne, what are you seeing out there with some of the protesters?
That's right. There's more than, a dozen people, dozens of people actually out here at the bottom of the steps of the Capitol ahead of Governor Stitt's final State of the State address. And they're calling this an opening rally. There are people here protesting, and there's also people here, in support of some of the legislation that will be addressed this session. I'm going to step out so you can see. Some of them have signs. There's about 12 organizations here. And they're all here, like I said, to support and protest some of the legislation this session. We've had people take the podium. We have a young girl singing right now. She's actually very, very good. And people are here, just to talk about the issues they are passionate about, including education, the death penalty, and an increase in data centers. We've had someone talking about that as well across the state. And so I think the most common issue, though, here today is the focus on immigration and the opposition to ICE. But I'm hearing this group is going to head indoors shortly ahead of the speech, so we'll continue to follow what's going on out here. Back to you.
All right, Deanne Stein live for us. We'll expect them in here pretty soon, perhaps as well, or somewhere around here maybe.
That's why we have these on.
So we can hear, yeah.
Yeah, if you've ever been in this building, it's beautiful. And you guys paid for it, by the way. We just renovated the Capitol. But the acoustics, it's not exactly like you want to go listen to a concert, right? There's no sound absorbing materials. So when they get in here, it is going to be loud. And listen, that's protected by the Constitution. Mm-hmm. And as long as it's people protest, you get the right to express yourself, and that's going to happen.
You mentioned that. Did they paint some of this? It looks like it's all new, some of this area stuff.
So much of this is new, and the shot we're looking at right now at Great Oklahoman's Robert S. Kerr, Senator Robert S. Kerr, Jim Thorpe, and around the top, the dome that was placed on a few years ago. It's a magnificent building and a tribute to the state of Oklahoma. And shout out to Trey Thompson, who ran that group that rebuilt this building. That's not the view 20 years ago. We didn't have that dome. And so that's something that Governor Keating was overseeing, going back in time there for you folks. So this is it's a beautiful building. And the great thing about it, it's got internet now. Holy cow, we're wired into the web, and you can see us without any delays or any glitches.
Welcome to 2026. I know some people may be watching this from around the country, around the world even. And so if you ever come to Oklahoma, this is a place to visit. So close to downtown Oklahoma City, and just a beautiful, beautiful building. And the renovations, like you said, they've done an amazing job. I want to go back to some of the topics that the governor may talk about today. We don't have his speech, so we don't exactly know what he's going to talk about. But he sent a lot of press releases. He's had a lot of things in the news recently that gives us an idea of what he could talk about. I made a list of a few of them. Education, of course, is going to be the big one. We mentioned education already with maybe teacher pay raises, some of the different initiatives they have for that. Welfare reform is a big one. We can go into that further. Entrepreneurship, Governor Kevin Stitt has been big about small businesses, about business leaders. He signed an executive order in terms of entrepreneurship we can talk about as well. Child welfare, the daycare situation, energy, Data centers are very big in eastern Oklahoma right now. Going to be a big issue probably here in the rest of the state as well.
Enormous issue.
Enormous issue.
Enormous issue, yes.
Him being with the leader of the National Governors Association. Tribal relations. We saw the Cherokee Nation Principal Chief Chuck Hoskin Jr. here earlier as well. We expect him to mention some stuff about the tribes. So I know that you spoke with former Rep. Jason Dunnington, Paul Rosino as well. Tell us what they had to tell, because you asked them. You asked them what their top 5 issues are going to be this session. What did they have to tell you about that?
Well, I think across the board, both of them were talking about education and health and energy. I know that Jason talks a lot about that. So for Jason, who is a former rep and now he's a lobbyist and he's on Your Vote Counts in Oklahoma City and Tulsa each weekend, his top list was energy, second education and healthcare, affordability and investments. Now, when you look at that last one, affordability and investments, there has been some bipartisan work going on about housing in Oklahoma. Specifically, there's not enough of it. Mm-hmm. And they're taking a look at, it's easy to go onto News9, news6.com, and you can see Leader Kurt and Leader Munson this weekend talking about that. There's a great amount of discussion statewide and federally about some of these private equity coming in and buying large swaths of housing, making it difficult for people to get into homes. You've seen the president really interjecting himself into the search for a Fed chair. He believes that interest rates should come down. You have interest rates high. Young people can't afford housing. So that's going to be something that's very high on the list. Now, Republicans don't like to use the term affordability. The president has famously said it's a hoax. It's not a hoax. That's why the president's interjecting himself on data centers and energy and trying to do something about the housing shortage. So it is a big deal. They're going to have to address it so far as they can in Oklahoma about housing. Energy is something that has snuck up on people. Jerry Bonin and I do a podcast each week about energy, and we began to see about a year ago when the Mag 7, the big tech companies, started doing this CapEx on all of these chips to do AI. And what people didn't see coming was the build out that was going to be necessary to work that through, to supply that. Now there's discussions about there's too much build out. A lot of this AI is not going to come to pass. And because it's so quiet, it fuels conspiracies. But there's also the other side of that group that's going, how's it going to impact my water? How's it going to impact my rates? That issue is to be defined. And right now, the tech bros are the ones getting blamed by the utilities. There's some folks saying utilities are building it out too much. The fact is that this may have the most friction built into it after education. And I will tell you this, you're going to see some legislators tiring of too many virtual days. They're tired of the fact we're not meeting as much as other states around us. When you see the state department, the state commerce, state chamber of commerce saying literacy and health issues, our low rankings are bad for business, you're going to see movement. And that's going to maybe pit business and education leaders typically going at each other about what needs to be done. There is going to be friction on that, I believe.
You mentioned the data centers. There's about 6 or 7 bills filed this session just when it comes to data centers. I can go into that here in a second, and we can go more in depth about that, because that's something that a lot of people, I think, are worried about, or some are excited about it because it's bringing jobs and things like that as well. We also talked to Paul Rosino, and he graciously brought us some water a little bit ago, but he also spoke with you about some of his top 5 issues. What did he say? Is it similar to what Jason Dunnington said?
It is, except that Senator Rosino is there now, and he's Health and Human Services Chair in the Senate. So he's very involved in these particular issues. So as you may recall, when we ended the year, we had some disagreements over what was happening at mental health. And there was the biggest friction last year was whenever that the legislature took the extraordinary step of getting into firing the director of the Department of Mental Health and Substance Abuse. That was a Republican versus Republican situation. So Department of Mental Health, by the way, it's still a mess from a budget standpoint. And our general health care ratings are terrible. And so he'll be right in the middle of that. But you see also teacher pay, literacy at the top of his list. I think those are the 2 biggest issues, and energy, that are going to dominate this session.
Let's dive into education a little bit more because that was on both lists that you had there. The governor has talked a lot about it as well. And basically everybody you talk to, education is very, very important this year. Something that they talk about is called the Mississippi Miracles. People at home may not understand that. It's something that they tried back in 2013 with you don't basically advance grades until you are fully literate and can read by the third grade, I believe is when it is. And there was a recent report that came out that said that third graders in Oklahoma read at a much lower rate nationwide. And so is that something that you are hearing as well when it comes to literacy? What are some ideas that they have for this? This is a very bipartisan issue. It's both sides, the governor, everyone seems to be on the same page when it comes to this.
It is, and it is something that back during the summer, early fall, the State Chamber of Commerce came out with their Compete Oklahoma discussion. And one of the two areas, the two data points that they focused on were health and education. And they're saying, look, we can do all of these wonderful things to recruit businesses here, but our education rankings are bad. And if you're a S&P company, Dow Jones 200, you're concerned about the families that you bring here. What's the education system like? Are they going to get measles, right? These sorts of things. And so these were two issues that generally you see chambers of commerce talking about. We need to cut taxes, or we need to do something about workforce. They're saying this is a workforce. These are existential problems for Oklahoma, and it's just astounding to see these business groups say, and by the way, there's one other, which is childcare. You can't have your workforce blossoming if the family can't get to work because they're taking care of kids. Now, you get into all kinds of cultural issues on that one.
Right.
But the fact is that the lack of childcare, the lack of our numbers being so bad on literacy and our health rankings so bad is it's the sort of data point that hurts Oklahoma, and these people know it.
Yeah.
And that when you said it's bipartisan, that's across the board. It's how they're going to address it will be the friction.
Childcare, I want to touch on that because you mentioned that over 400 childcare businesses closed between November 2025 and January 2026. That has put, of course, a big pressure on the industry as well. Oklahoma Human Services requested $70 million from the legislature. We already talked about the budget being tight, so will they get that? Is there anything that they can do to try to help with child welfare and daycares across the state?
Well, you walk into this building and start asking that question, you get a lot of the I'm not really sure. Again, ARPA money's gone, right? That's all allocated. You know, back in the Biden administration, the Democrats, when they ran everything, tried to get child care reform through. Couldn't get it done. So it's back to everybody's talking about it, but when you start, well, then what specifically are you going to do? Well, they've all got a concept of a plan, but they don't have a plan. And it will be a budget issue as to what they can do, Jonathan.
Okay, let's go back to education, too, because something that a lot of families in Oklahoma may know, it's about the parental choice tax credit. This is something that the governor really pushed for as a campaign promise, and so it caps at $250 million. That cap, they've reached it. The governor wants to extend that cap, just get rid of the cap altogether. Some lawmakers, even Republicans, are saying, well, you can't go above the $250 million. That will be put in a bad situation financially. I think Arizona, they lost $1 billion or something when they put theirs in place. So this child tax credit, is this going to be a big topic again? Democrats want to get rid of it completely.
Yeah, and there's going to be some issues with the rule end of things with the Republicans. Yeah. I've had some Republicans who didn't want to be named say, look, we don't want the governor giving any more money to these private schools, that sort of thing. And those are from Republicans, not Democrats. And so you're going to see, especially I think among the rural Republicans, and that's all of them.
Yeah.
There are no areas right now that are represented, rural areas, big rural areas represented by Democrats. And so this is one of those situations where this will be inter-party, and it's going to do a lot about the budget, and there'll be people saying, no, we can't afford it.
Okay. We have Paul Rosino. We just mentioned him. We'd love to have him live if we could possibly get him, and we'd love to have our first guest on here if he can. part of the education thing, there's a new state superintendent right now. Of course, Lyndall Fields. We're hoping to get him maybe after this speech and get reaction from him. And I don't know if the control room has maybe some sound from what the governor had to say about Lyndall Fields. But this is an appointment that the governor was able to make. And if we have that, we'd love to hear what he had to say about the new state superintendent.
All right, we're getting it.
We're going to talk about education. I'm so excited about the culture change in education. My first appointment, 7 years in, I was able to appoint Lyndall Fields. And so I'm going to ask the legislature to, hey, let's give the next governor the authority to appoint that, to take politics out, because 38 other states give the governor the authority to appoint the superintendent of education, except Oklahoma.
So he wants to appoint the state superintendent of education like some other states. Do you think that's a possibility? Do you think it's realistic? Or, is this something that voters are going to decide?
Here's the funny thing, the ironic thing rather. When you start talking to legislators about letting the governor appoint more people, they kind of push back. Now, they go, well, that's a lot of power. And I go, hey, man, the President of the United States appoints all of these people.
Can you talk to Haley?
Some of these are different type folks, right? They're still not really wanting. They think the voters want to do this because they don't like concentrated power. But here's the thing. The governor got to appoint Lyndall Fields. All the reviews on Lyndall Fields are great. And he's saying, let me control this, or let the next. He won't get to do it, but the next one would. And there's strong data and strong support for it. Let's make the executive branch stronger on this education issue. We elect everything.
Yeah.
And it's probably going to be a conversation we're going to hear in the next few years about how many people we elect statewide and why it's hard for the governor to control the executive branch while a lot of the people are against him.
Yeah. Let's check in now with Haley Hetrick. Haley, I think you have a guest with you right now, and what are you hearing in terms of education too?
Well, in education, we're definitely talking about, what we talked about, the state superintendent appointment position, but let's switch it over a little bit to healthcare. So we've talked a lot about healthcare, welfare. What are you looking forward to in the governor's speech coming up?
Well, I'm hoping that we're going to talk about what we're going to do for Oklahomans going forward, right? We've had some really big agency asks, almost $500 million from the Healthcare Authority. Mental health, the consent decree is a big deal for the state. We know we have to fund some of these things, but how much? I don't know how we get there, but it will affect Oklahomans if we don't have some kind of healthcare initiative to move us forward.
And this is Senator Paul Rosino with the Senate Health and Human Services Chairman. How much have you been working with the agencies in the interim to get those asks and to get those budget numbers initially?
So we have had lots of meetings, lots of information. I was a little bit surprised with the Healthcare Authority's amount. I didn't know that was going to come. So it's really hard when you can't predict those kind of numbers. We did know, of course, mental health was having issues, especially with the consent decree. And we knew we would have to give them a supplemental because of what happened last year. And we put such good guardrails on them budgetarily. But we did not know about the Healthcare Authority. And so with Health and Human Services alone, the agencies are close to $800 million to $1 billion. The state of Oklahoma doesn't have those kind of funds.
And then for Oklahomans out there watching, the budget process can look a little bit different from the outside looking in. Just talk about how much work goes into those initial asks to the final numbers in the end of May.
Yeah, so we started probably a day or two after session last year already talking and trying to forecast what we were going to need and where we were going to go. And so in many cases, we've had meetings all throughout the interim trying to find numbers. Then it has to go to the budget team, right? So the appropriators have to understand it. And then, of course, we have to wait to see what the final number is from the Board of Equalization to even see what we can spend. So this is a constant process that churns all year round.
All right, Senator Rosino, thank you so much. We'll go ahead and send it back over to you guys.
All right, Haley, thank you. And that was Senator Paul Rosino. If you're unfamiliar, he represents District 45, Republican senator there. So if you're just joining us and may not know who that was, that is who Senator Paul Rosino is. Some Democrats came out with their plan for education. We only have a couple minutes here before we got to go to something else. But they want to repeal the parental choice tax credit, and they want to raise money through a tax on vapes, actually, and that's how they plan to fund this. Is that something that's realistic? Do you think that maybe Republicans would look at other ways to maybe fund this?
I think that all hands on deck and all the ears are open, because what you just heard Senator Rosino says, we don't have the funds to do fill in the blank. Mm-hmm. It is one of those situations like a family. Now the governor proposes what he wants to do, but remember, this house and this house, they write the checks, okay? And so that's what's going to happen there. So somebody who's the chair of the committee like that, he's going to be drafting that budget. I mean, he's going to listen to the executive branch, but make no mistake, they're going to do it. Now, the governor can veto it, right? And he does sometimes. But this is going to really be a House and Senate situation where that they try to figure out, especially in May, how much money they have, all these entities that tell them how much they have to appropriate. That's how it gets in. And by the way, this is very public today, right? The speeches, a lot of this work, people chafe on this, but a lot of this work, they're not wearing jackets, their sleeves are rolled up, they're in dimly lit rooms, and they're trying to figure out how do we balance this budget, just like mom and dad used to do, right? So this is a legislative aspect of it. The governor will have some input into it, but he proposes, they dispose.
People that are watching this right now that may not follow this super closely, that's a big part of lawmakers' jobs, is just appropriating funds, setting a budget. Like you said, just like your own personal budget at home, they're doing it with billions of dollars at the state level as well.
Yeah, the Constitution says, come to town, do a budget, go home. Wait for the 31st. That's constitutionally what they do. The governor gets to do the state of the state today, and his biggest input on this process for the rest of this session, the veto. The threat of the veto is what the governor has that allows him to help craft the budget, or the threat of the veto.
Yeah, and the override of the veto, because the last session, he's actually throughout his tenure, he's had a lot of bills that have been overridden as well, which is a normal part of the process as well. You get a certain amount of numbers. And
sometimes the governor unites Republicans and Democrats on those deals.
On the opposite.
Yeah, and they vote to override his veto.
Yeah. If you're just now joining us, we wanted to kind of recap everything. We are at the state capitol on the 4th floor of the rotunda, and we are standing by for Governor Kevin Stitt's State of the State speech, his final State of the State speech. He's expected to speak for about 30 to 45 minutes. So far, we've heard from lawmakers, but we've also kind of analyzed what he could talk about, because there are a lot of different things. This could be a capstone speech because it's his big final one. And we're only just a few minutes away now from a statewide noon show. We're going to have even more coverage of this because we have the biggest team of reporters across the state, and we want to highlight that and definitely show what we have going on. So Reagan Ledbetter and Lisa Monahan are going to be anchoring that statewide noon newscast, and we have them standing by. Guys, what can we expect for this noon show, and what are you guys hearing about this State of the State?
Coop and Scott, thank you guys so much. Doing things a little bit different today with statewide noon show here for us, News on 6 and News 9. These issues matter to all of Oklahoma, and so it was important for us as Griffin to pool the resources together, bring everybody together, all of our reporters and our team, Scott and Jonathan out there doing things right now to bring you guys full coverage of the governor's address.
We do have team coverage, every angle, tackling what it means for your wallet, what it'll mean for education. Schools in particular have been a big issue for Governor Kevin Stitt, where I know a lot of Oklahomans are going to be looking to hear what he plans to do in his final year, which he's expected to outline in this capstone speech.
And you look back just to his speech last year. I always do that each year when we're looking at these, of what he laid out for that year. And last year, he kicked off the speech with business. He said that our economy is the strongest it's ever been, top 10 state for business. And so with the big news of Devin today, that's going to be a big question. Is he going to address that in his speech, as well as immigration?
Immigration has been a nationwide topic. It's also been a pretty big one here as Oklahoma City looked to possibly have an ICE processing facility. The Oklahoma City mayor coming out saying that particular warehouse was not going to become an immigration facility. But we know that Homeland Security has still been looking at Oklahoma for a facility of this nature. So I think Kevin Stitt is expected to speak to some degree about immigration and ICE here in Oklahoma.
And as a hot button topic, we're expecting protesters outside the Capitol, possibly inside the Capitol, because they can be in the Capitol Rotunda where Scott and Jonathan are right now, just to see what we'll see. But we have our chopper up right now, and a few dozen people out there. Deanne Stein's one of our reporters. There's our look from the chopper right now, a live look outside the Capitol, as we are now about an hour away from Governor Kevin Stitt's final State of the State address, his 8th as governor of the state of Oklahoma. There's about a dozen or so protesters out there right now, but we have full team coverage for this statewide noon show. There's some of the protesters inside the Capitol right now, as it is their right to be inside the Capitol and protest on this day.
We have seen crowds of protesters be quite large in years past. This one relatively small, at least for now. We do know our Deanne Stein that was outside said there's about a dozen or 2 dozen, as you mentioned. Some, though, they're in support of what's to come, what the legislature will look at doing in 2026. We do know that we have our Haley Hetrick there live in the Rotunda, and she had an opportunity to speak with Governor Stitt ahead of today's speech. You know, he said, obviously, talking with her, education has been a big thing. He was able to appoint the first superintendent. It was his first appointment in terms of education, and he wants that to happen for governors going forward. So we're expecting to hear more.
And that's a big change this year. If you think a year ago when he was giving that State of the State address, Ryan Walters was in that position. There was a lot of heat around education in the state of Oklahoma, and I think Lyndall Fields being appointed has changed the tone around education in our state right now. So I'm curious to see what the governor has to say, as he told Haley the other night that it's his top priority heading into the year. But some big topics as he closes out his 8 years as governor.
Certainly, we know that when he made the appointment of Lyndall Fields late last year in October, he hinted then in that speech that he was going to ask the legislature to make moves toward making that position, the top educator, an appointed position versus putting it on the ballot to the voters because of some of the tumultuous events that had occurred in the last year under the leadership of Ryan Walters. So we do expect that he is going to call on the legislature to make those moves for the future of Oklahomans. And I think that there are a lot of families that are interested to see if that's going to happen as well.
Another big issue, Emery Bryan, News on 6's Emery Bryan is covering tribal issues today. That's, of course, going to be a big question to see how the governor addresses relations with tribals as he closes out his time as governor. But we'll have much more coming up in about 10 minutes from now, a statewide newscast on News on 6 and News 9. Coop, Scott, back to you guys. Coop, Scott, back to you guys.
All right, 11 minutes. We'll be looking forward to that, and we'll, of course, have coverage afterwards as well. Reagan, thank you. We're joined now by Senate Pro Tem Lonnie Paxton. Senator, thanks for joining us here. You've been busy today, but what do you expect from today's speech? First off, I want to ask you just about the significance of this. This is a big deal for Oklahomans. Some people watching right now may not follow this very closely, but it is a big deal. And what does it mean for you as a lawmaker getting to hear the governor speak?
Well, we always enjoy getting to hear him, and this is, of course, Governor Stitt's last State of the State speech. This is number 8 of 8. So, you know, the governor has some big priorities he wants to do. You know, if you're in your last year of your job, you want to accomplish a few things, and he really is, and he's going to lay that out for us. That's the significance of the State of the State speech. It's his opportunity not just to tell lawmakers, but to tell the state of Oklahoma what he's wanting to do for the rest of his term.
What do you think are going to be some big topics today? One thing we've heard from Republicans, Democrats, the governor himself is education. Education, I assume, will be one of the big ones, but is there anything else that he may be talking about today?
Well, sure. So, you know, one thing lawmakers do all year long is we go visit with our constituents. So we hear from them. I've been all over the state visiting with members of our Senate, and while I'm out there, I get to visit with people who are running for office, our members themselves who are running for election, and I ask, what are you hearing at the doorstep? When you knock on a door and tell them who you are and you're running for office, what do you hear? And the biggest thing, obviously, is the education. But that'll be talked about a lot. Another one that's really came to the top is the affordability of home ownership, whether that be through insurance rates or through property taxes. So that's an issue we're going to discuss this year. What's something the legislature could do that would help out with that?
And Scott, what do you have for him in terms of anything that you're hearing that the senator may have some insight on?
Can I quote Lennon and McCartney? Give me money, that's what I want, right? And
right.
You're hearing these agencies with some really big asks. And we just heard, I think, Senator Rosino just a few minutes ago going, some of the asks that are being made are just, we can't do that.
Right.
What are we going to do?
Well, you have agencies asking. You also have a lot of members themselves, House members and Senate members that have legislation out there where they're asking for money for different things as well. That's what the process is about. You know, we take all that in. We hear the testimony. We hear bills. That's why they run through committee. That's why they run to the floor. You know, we have debates and discussions of all this. But at the end of the day, there is a finite amount of money we do have to spend.
And then you have, at the end of the year, or right away. Do you just Chairman Caldwell and Chairman Hall, are they talking now? I mean, how does this work between the House and the Senate?
Yeah, they've been talking for several months. This doesn't just start today. And what people are seeing is the official start of the legislative session. The legislative process has been going on ever since the last session was over. It really never stops. The senators and House members that go work and work for the people, they never stop. They're meeting with constituents. They're also up here working on their bills. And of course, Chairman Caldwell and Hall have been working on the budget already. And let me say, not just those two, but all the subcommittee chairs as well. We have subcommittee chairs that cover every aspect of the state. Everybody's already been working hard on this.
I should say for our audience that Trey Caldwell, the A&B chair in the House, and Chairman Hall, Senator Hall in the Senate.
Correct.
Anything else that was kind of on you said you're listening to legislators. I've been struck by that because most of the time politicians are talking. You were not listening to her. What did you learn from your members that you might not, when you left in May, you might not have had at the top of your list?
Well, there's all sorts of things. I mean, you travel to different parts of the state. There are different concerns in different parts of the state. Like one example, I went to eastern Oklahoma with Senator Tom Woods and learned a lot about the poultry industry and how maybe if Tyson is pulling out because of lawsuits over the river basin in that area, over that watershed, it's going to destroy those farmers. So we went one-on-one and met with those poultry farmers and talked to them about what their issues are. Then you go in the western part of the state, their issues seem to always be focused around the agricultural area, around water and about the use of water and everything. So all those things, you hear it everywhere you go.
Covering news in Tulsa, something we've covered a lot is data centers over there, and data centers are a big deal for people in eastern Oklahoma, but western Oklahoma too. You mentioned water because a lot of people that live there worried about the watershed, what it could do to the water, what it could do to their energy rates and things like that. There are several bills filed this session related to data centers. What are you hearing about this? There's also some positive views too because it brings jobs. So it's kind of a multifaceted issue. What are you hearing when it comes to data centers?
We're hearing everything when it comes to data centers. What we're going to try to do is put together the facts so people can see, because water usage is an issue, how much water usage is there actually. We're also looking at how much energy usage. One thing we did last year to help mitigate the fact that these things use a lot of energy is what was called behind the meter. We allowed these data centers to build their own power plants to be a source of power for those centers. On the other side of it, if data centers don't go in the United States, they're going to be in foreign countries, hostile countries. So having those here where we can keep better regulations on them and protect people's data is very, very important. So I know it's a Trump administration priority that we have more of these data centers here. And just so people know, a lot of people think we're giving big state incentives for them to do this. We don't give them anything. The only thing they would qualify for is quality jobs like any manufacturing business would. But I don't think they're even going to qualify for that. So they have to stand on their own. They pay an enormous amount of property taxes, which primarily goes to schools and counties. The state doesn't get that, but that helps out those local communities a lot. So that's what we're going to talk about. What are the cons, what are the pros, and kind of let the legislators kind of weigh that out and also make sure our citizens have all the facts on these things.
What do you want Oklahomans to know that may be watching this right now and they say the legislative session is starting today? You say you work year round, but this is the official start. What do you want them to know over the next 2 or 3 months as you guys work through these bills? And what's your message to them?
My message is stay connected with your legislators. If there's a piece of legislation you're interested in, we want to hear from you. That's the best thing we can do is to go visit your actual legislator and you look at what committees they're on and see where they could provide you some information. A lot of what we get is people are confused what they're hearing. They get misinformation. We're a great resource as legislators to kind of clear that up. You can form your own opinion on it, but having the facts is very important. So stay engaged with us. Let us know what you're thinking as a citizen, because that helps drive what we do up here.
It's very easy to reach out too on the website. You have a forum, and you probably hear from constituents all the time, right?
We do. We get a lot of emails, also phone calls. But it also, if you have time, come up here. Come up and make an appointment to meet with your legislator and sit down and talk to them. Most everybody will do that, and just to have that conversation with them.
Let me ask you, you're married to a teacher, right? And
yes.
You've been the pro tem. Now this is your second session as pro tem. You're hearing from, like the state chamber, talking about the numbers that look bad on education. We've had discussions about virtual days, like there's too many of them. We're not in school enough in terms of surrounding states. Our kids are in school. Where do you think the reform aspect of the education discussion is heading?
Well, we've all seen the report that state chamber put together, and we're kind of referring to that as the gut punch report. We kind of Didn't hear things we wanted to hear, but we heard what we needed to hear because we need to know where we're lacking. And there's a lot of areas we're doing really well in Oklahoma, and some areas that we are falling behind. And education is definitely one of those. One thing that's reform with me is that I've been pushing for several years is I do not like the virtual school days. When kids aren't face to face with their teacher, they're not going to learn. And I've been fighting back against that. We actually passed legislation last year. It goes into effect next school year, not this school year, but next school year, where it very much limits that. If you're going to have if it's snowing outside and it's too dangerous to get to school, fine. You do a snow day. That's what we did when I was a kid. You didn't do a virtual day because there's virtually no learning during those days, and you make it up. And you look at the days kids are in school in Oklahoma. The worldwide average is in excess of 200 days a year. The nationwide United States average is 180 days. Oklahoma is 166, and several of those days are substituted with professional days. So when you add all that together, you take a kid pre-K all the way through 12th grade when they graduate, under those numbers, they will have lost an entire year of education compared to our neighboring states. And we wonder why we're last in education in some categories. Absolutely.
Data point is
absolutely. That is part of it. That is a big part of it, is our kids are not in front of teachers enough. And those days I just mentioned, we have been substituting an enormous amount of those days with these virtual days. And any parent knows how much work their kid actually does on those virtual days. And like I said, it's virtually nothing. And so my wife was a second grade teacher for 30 years. She was the first to tell you, you cannot teach a second grader how to read over a computer. That has to be a face-to-face interaction. We have awesome teachers in this state. We're working on pay, increasing that more. We've increased their pay 3 times since I've been here. We're going to try to do that some more, but they need face-to-face interaction with those teachers.
Senator, thank you so much for being here. We're running out of time,
you.
But thanks for taking a few minutes, and I know we'll check in with you throughout this session as well, and enjoy the speech, and we'll check in with you later.
I'm glad y'all are here. Thank you for doing this.
Yeah, of course.
Good to see you, Senator.
Good to see you.
And we're running out of time here for this YouTube show. We'll be here after this speech as well. Reagan Ledbetter and Lisa Monahan, we're going to have full coverage leading up to the governor's speech. That coverage is going to start about 12:30. The governor expected to speak around 12:45, and we're told it should end around 1:30. After 1:30, we will have full coverage as well to have a full post-speech interview with some of our guests as well. So thank you for joining us here on YouTube, and feel free to comment and tell us where you're watching from.
5, 4.
The noon show begins right now.
2, 1.
From Oklahoma's own, this is a live special presentation of the State of the State.
And thank you for joining us here at noon for this special noon newscast. I'm Reagan Ledbetter.
And I'm Lisa Monahan, Oklahoma's own Griffin Media, bringing you statewide coverage of Governor Kevin Stitt's final State of the State address for his last year in office. And we do want to begin with our Capitol reporter, Haley Hetrick. She's tracking some of the governor's priorities for the upcoming legislative session. What's the latest out there, Haley?
Hey, Lisa and Reagan, Governor Kevin Stitt has been very vocal about education, economic development, and welfare. Those are all topics we expect to hear about in his State of the State speech coming up here. We did talk with him on Friday, and he says in his final year in this building, he's wanting to build on the momentum that he's gathered over the last 7 years.
It's been amazing 7 years. I think it's the best 7 years of our state history. We have largest savings account. I've cut taxes by $1.6 billion. But it's this culture change that now people are moving here. People are talking about Oklahoma. So I think that's the biggest accomplishment that we've done.
Governor Kevin Stitt has touted the state savings account, now calling on lawmakers to continue with a flat budget this year. We also discussed education, where the governor says he's wanting to look at policy to improve reading scores, starting with early intervention. Stitt also tells me he'll be asking the legislature to give the governor appointment power for the state superintendent instead of having that issue on the ballot. Another top priority, he says, is welfare reform. Stitt says the state will go bankrupt if they have any additional people on Medicaid. Now, we also talked with the governor about immigration, a hot topic nationally and here in Oklahoma. Hear what he says about that coming up in about 15 minutes. Live at the Capitol for Oklahoma's Own, I'm Haley Hetrick.
Haley, thank you.
Yeah, during his 7 years in office, the governor has often had a somewhat tense relationship in terms of the state's tribal governments, and we do have our Emery Bryan following that for us today. We are expecting some protests, particularly against federal immigration. There's Emory now. Okay.
Tribes. Yeah. You're right. The governor has had a tenuous relationship with the tribes. He first mentioned them in his first State of the State address, talking about the compacts and how he wanted the Indian tribes to contribute more to education. Of course, that relationship has deteriorated, particularly with the tribes in eastern Oklahoma over time, especially after the McGirt decision. The governor sees that as an attack on Oklahoma's sovereignty. He has said, really, if the McGirt decision was completely allowed to stand, he would not be the governor for half the state of Oklahoma. The tribes see it very differently. They see it as very important to their sovereignty. They think that righted a wrong that had been in place ever since statehood. Of course, the U.S. Supreme Court weighed in on that. It would seem to be some finality to the matter. The governor certainly does not see that. We've seen the Cherokee Nation delegation here already, the chief, Chuck Hoskin Jr. here. He didn't want to talk about what he was expecting to see in the speech, but he will speak afterward about what he hears from the speech, because while they didn't get much of a mention last year, in years past, the governor has criticized the tribes for not doing enough for the state of Oklahoma. Of course, the tribes take a completely different view. They believe that they are doing a lot, not just for their own people, but for all Oklahomans in these reservations that now have been affirmed by the U.S. Supreme Court. So the tribes all are going to be listening. Some have made compacts recently with the state. Some, like the Cherokees, are holding out, trying to negotiate with this governor that's had quite the contentious relationship. That is going to be what the tribes, especially from eastern Oklahoma, are listening for today in this State of the State speech. Back to you.
And Emory, have you talked with Chief Chuck Hoskin Jr. at all leading into the governor's State of the State and what he would like to see in the governor's final year in office?
Well, one thing he has said is that there has never been a governor so opposed to the Indian tribes as Governor Kevin Stitt. You know, it was remarkable when he came into office. A lot was made of his own tribal citizenship, and the tribes thought, well, that'll be good for them. Today, they don't see that relationship anywhere near that. They see quite a fractured relationship between particularly the eastern Oklahoma tribes and state government. You know, the Choctaws have made some compacts. There are deals out there to be made on tags, on tobacco, on gambling, so many things. The governor has said he's not negotiating with them further on that. The tribes, it's really a standoff. The latest is this whole thing about hunting rights, and of course that's been a hot topic lately just because it's hunting season. The governor, the tribes still at great odds over who will enforce the hunting laws in the state of Oklahoma and on tribal land. That's still going to be something that I'd be surprised if it doesn't get mentioned in the State of the State.
Emory, no doubt, be a hot button topic for the governor's speech today. But shifting now to protesters, we've already seen protesters outside the Capitol today. We expected this, particularly against federal immigration policy.
Yeah, we've seen the protesters outside as well as inside, but our Deanne Stein is just outside of the Capitol where there's a relatively small crowd compared to prior years, Deanne.
Yeah, I'd say about 24 people, a little over. As you can see behind me, they've all made their way inside now. And while there were people here protesting this morning outside, they were actually calling this an opening rally because many people I spoke to this morning said that there are some bills this session that they can get behind and that they can support. But earlier this morning, dozens gathered at the Capitol steps ahead of Governor Stitt's State of the State address, representing about a dozen organizations. Speakers touched on a range of issues like data centers, education, the death penalty, but like you said, immigration dominated the conversation with strong opposition to ICE and what some are calling false narratives being told. Protesters say they want the governor to clearly address immigration enforcement moving forward.
The lies that are being told about undocumented individuals, overstaying your visa is a civil violation, and being in the country undocumented is a misdemeanor. And so we have painted undocumented individuals as criminals, which that is not the case. That is not true.
Now, as far as safety, troopers were outside here during the rally, keeping things safe. And I'm told that there's plenty of law enforcement inside, as well as these protesters and people here rallying are making their way indoors. Back to you.
Deanne, thank you. We do know that a lot of Oklahomans will be looking to hear what Governor Stitt has to say on the immigration issue, but we do want to pass along some programming changes to our coverage. This is due to the state of the state.
Now, for those of you in the Oklahoma City market, The Bold and Beautiful will air overnight at 1:37, and for both Oklahoma City and Tulsa, Beyond the Gates will air at 2:07 a.m. Still to come here at noon, we have much more coverage of our statewide State of the State address coming up.
Yeah, but we first want to get you caught up on some of the other big stories breaking in Oklahoma and around the country, including a major business deal involving Devon Energy. What it means for the company's headquarters here in Oklahoma City when we come back.
And we'll get back to our special State of the State coverage in just a few minutes, but we do have a number of developing stories in Oklahoma and across the country we want to update you on.
Among them a big one, Devon Energy announcing a $58 billion merger with fellow shale drilling company Coterra Energy. It's part of the deal. Devon would be moving its headquarters to Houston while maintaining a large presence here in Oklahoma City. A lot of questions surrounding this one. In a statement, the state chamber said while this marks a new chapter for Devon, it remains optimistic Oklahoma City will remain an important part of Devon's future.
And some other news, lawmakers are expected to consider Leo's Law in the upcoming session. It would mandate fentanyl testing in specific DHS cases. It's named for Leo Toe, a 3-year-old Okmulgee boy who died from fentanyl poisoning while his mother was under DHS supervision.
Right now, an Edmonton is in jail without bond after prosecutors charged him with the murder of his adoptive mother. Investigators say Jordan Weems killed Spring Weems with a hammer just last week, then hid her body in a trash can. Court records show Jordan was recently disciplined for sneaking out of the house and running from police.
And Tulsa police are investigating after a woman's body was found in the woods Sunday near the Gilcrease Expressway in MLK.
Police say the woman lived nearby and had been missing for a few days. Police say there are no signs of foul play at this time, but the medical examiner will determine the cause of death. Her name has not yet been released.
Well, some good news. It's positively spring-like today across Oklahoma after a weekend and recent weeks of frigid cold weather.
We need some warmer weather here. Our Oklahoma weather experts will break down how long this will last when we come back.
From the Bob Mills Weather Center, meteorologist Justin Rudisell.
Oh, the sun is shining on this Monday afternoon here at lunchtime. A little bit of a south breeze. You can see a couple of our Lucky Star Skycam network bouncing in the wind, but overall a pretty nice day, and I think you're going to love the temperatures here later on this afternoon, especially compared to the last week and a half. We've been under the frozen tundra. How about temperatures near 60 degrees later on this afternoon with that sunshine, some increasing clouds, some high-level clouds. 1 week ago, how about this? A high temperature of 24 as our today's afternoon high temperature of 63. Our normal high temperature is 51, so actually above average here this afternoon with that south wind and light in nature, 10 to 15, and a lot of sunshine. Outside right now, we're already at 58 degrees with the dew point of 33 with that southwest wind, so fairly dry humidity levels. And so with all that sunshine, we're heating up the atmosphere pretty nicely with those upper 50s to low 60s, a little bit cooler off towards the north into the 40s with that southwest breeze that'll occasionally gust 20 to 25, but for Oklahoma standard, that's nothing. So quite comfortable here for lunchtime into the afternoon hours. And if you have any evening plans, not bad as well. So we'll top out in the low to mid 60s here this afternoon around 3 or 4 o'clock. 63, 64 with those mostly sunny skies and a light southwest breeze. And then as we head throughout the evening hours, those clouds will thicken up as temperatures will fall out of the 50s into the 40s. So afternoon high temperatures today near 70 down there in Harmon, Hollis County, down towards Altus and Jackson County there. 60 in Tulsa, 62 in McAllister, 62 in Stillwater, and a 59 in Enid. Quiet right now, but Another weather storm, our weather system is heading our way. Some high-level clouds that will filter in here this evening, and then another cold front that will arrive with a little bit of moisture as we head towards, again, tonight with a little bit of drizzle, maybe some showers, and then maybe some showers tomorrow night into Wednesday morning. So increasing clouds here this afternoon, maybe a couple isolated showers that'll come in. Not tonight, but tomorrow night into Tuesday night into Wednesday morning. That'll probably be our best shot this next week of seeing any measurable precipitation across the state, just some light showers. So here tonight with an increasing moisture, maybe some light freezing drizzle and some drizzle off to the east. Does not look like a big deal. Temperatures 20s, 30s, and 40s. Tomorrow a little bit cooler with some winds out of the...
And welcome back to Griffin Media's special coverage of the State Address.
Now, one of the ways we're covering Governor Stitt's final address is on our digital platform, and that's where we've seen our Jonathan Cooper and Scott Mitchell breaking it all down in a pre-show where we've been talking a lot about what we anticipate Governor Kevin Stitt will be talking about today.
Absolutely, and guys, you guys have been doing a great job out there. We've been watching since 11 o'clock this morning. I got to ask, though, last year the governor opened up his speech talking about business, Oklahoma being a top 10 state in the country for business. How does the big announcement with Devon Energy impact the governor's speech? Does it alter anything at all?
Well, Reagan and Lisa, good afternoon from the Oklahoma State Capitol. We are on the 4th floor rotunda live, and I'm going to let Scott answer that question. This has been big news today, of course, and for the governor, not great timing with it being announced this morning that Devon Energy is going to be moving their headquarters to Houston. So how would that impact his speech today?
Well, you know, energy is a big, especially oil and gas, are big contributors to the state budget, all right? And there's been a lot of speculation about a Devon merger. Right now, there is so much speculation as what's about to happen to the oil market, especially with Venezuela. So now some of the sanctions are lifted. The world is awash in excess oil. It is not good times for oil and gas companies in terms of profitability. And it could well impact, could be referenced in today's speech, because it's such big news.
Yeah, and we expect him to talk about energy in other ways as well. Energy, a big part of the governor's speech. Also business, though. The governor ran on a platform of small business, of being entrepreneurship. What do you expect on that aspect of it?
It's interesting, and go back to Reagan's point, which is talking about small business and business being a top 10. This year, the governor is going to be looking at a couple of data points that business groups are concerned about. Have nothing to do with business. It's literacy and it's healthcare rankings, and we're at the bottom in both of those. Plus, this year we don't have the sort of, shall we say, distractions that were coming out of the State Department of Education last year. It's very quiet. Lyndall Fields is now there, and it's much quieter and more business-like, at least right now.
All right, Scott, we are on the 4th floor rotunda live at the Capitol, and the governor's going to have his speech right behind us over here. And Scott, I want to ask you the significance of this. Some people, they don't follow politics super closely, but they pay attention when it comes to the state of the state. So what is the significance of this speech for the governor? It could be a capstone speech because it's his last one.
100 miles an hour. So it's a capstone speech. It's his legacy speech. He's going to be detailing what he's done in the past few years. But the important aspect of this is kind of politics 101. The Constitution says he has to be here. It has to inform the state. This legislature has to meet. But the governor will propose some aspects, what he wants to get done as governor. Remember, he's NGA, National Governors Association chair, so he has a national agenda. But it's both houses, all right? You're going to take what the governor says, they'll take it into account, and then they go do their own thing. They're going to write the budget themselves, and the governor can veto it, but it takes over here.
All right, Scott, we're going to see a lot of lawmakers walking past us in just a few minutes as they go into that speech. We're going to have full post-speech coverage live on YouTube and here on News 9 and on News on 6. Guys, back to you in the studio.
Jonathan and Scott doing a great job for us there at the Capitol this afternoon. And you can watch Coop and Scott's full discussion and analysis after the speech on Oklahoma's own original YouTube channel, as well as on Facebook and X. And we do know Oklahoma's congressional delegation will also be keeping an eye on the topics Governor Stitt covers in this State of the State address.
We want to go now to Griffin Media's Bureau Chief, Washington Bureau Chief Alex Cameron, with the live look at what lawmakers are saying there. Alex.
Reagan, Lisa, the lawmakers here have their own issues right now. They're trying to end a partial government shutdown. So I don't know that today's State of the State is must-see TV for Oklahoma's congressional delegation. Certainly they will have staff who are either attending the speech or watching it and will report back to them on what's in it. But, typically it's the states who pay attention to what's happening at the federal level because that trickles down and impacts them. So I certainly will be watching for certain things related to federal policy from Governor Stitt today. We're having a moment in this country right now related to immigration reform and immigration enforcement. And of course, Governor Stitt had something to say about that, injected himself into the conversation in an interview on CNN, saying that Americans didn't like what they were seeing in Minneapolis and questioning the administration's end game, saying that he didn't think that Americans wanted all non-citizens being deported. That said, he came back a couple days later and praised the president, for sending in Tom Homan, the border czar, to take control of the situation there, and generally has been very supportive of President Trump. So I'll be interested to see if he sort of doubles down on that today to talk about how Oklahoma has been very supportive of this administration's efforts, and maybe even mention the fact that he authorized the National Guard, 200 members, volunteers of the National Guard, to be in Washington, D.C., where they are right now, helping to make this a safer city. Also be watching to see, what he has to say, if anything, about the One Big Beautiful Bill. That's a big theme for Republicans right now as we head toward the midterms, to talk about the tax breaks that the president and Congress passed last year. But, there are also some implications, budgetary implications for Oklahoma. The reforms to Medicaid, to SNAP, they certainly put some more burden on the states. I wouldn't expect him to mention that today, but that's certainly something that's got to be in the back of his mind. And then also, just in general, I mentioned the shutdown. Will he say, Congress, get your act together? We have to do it here at the state level. We have to pass a budget every year. You need to do the same. Again, those shutdowns, they make life difficult for governors and for state lawmakers. We're in the middle of one right now, so I'll be interested to see if he has anything to say about that today. Lisa, Reagan, back to you.
Alex, thanks so much from Washington, D.C. for us this afternoon. And Governor Stitt's State of the State address set to begin in about 20 minutes. We'll talk about all of that ahead.
And much more on the weather as we have some nice temperatures finally after some frigid cold weeks. Stay with us here at noon.
from the Bob Mills Weather Center, meteorologist Justin Rudisell.
Welcome back. It's 12:30 here on this Monday, and you can see from the Lucky Star Skycam Network, a couple high-level clouds, a little bit of a south breeze, but temperatures are quite mild. Even here at lunchtime, temperatures into the upper 50s to near 60 degrees with that sunshine. So a nice afternoon. If you can't get out and about here at lunchtime, this afternoon into the evening hours, we should see some nice, mild, quiet weather. Overnight low temperature of 31 here in Oklahoma City, some upper 30s, but a lot of locations upper 20s to low 30s, so not quite as cold as it's been at 28. That is our normal low temperature, quite seasonable. 58 right now with a south to southwest wind at around 10 to 15. That dew point a little low into the 30s, so that dry air is firmly in place, and with a lot of sunshine, we are warming temperatures up. Remember, we were into the upper 20s to low 30s just a handful of hours ago, now already near 60 degrees. Some cooler weather off towards the north with some 40s, but overall, mostly sunny skies. Those high-level clouds are filtering in from the northwest ahead of our next weather system, but that south breeze and filtered sunshine, temperatures well up into the 60s, low to mid-60s by the time we get to 3 or 4 o'clock this afternoon. And even here this evening, remember, daylight hours starting to creep into the evening hours after school and work, and you get a little bit more daylight to enjoy. Temperatures will be into the 50s, 40s by 9 o'clock. So a southwest wind, 10 to 15, occasional wind gusts 20 to 25, that mostly sunny skies, 50s, 60s, near 70 down across southwest Oklahoma. Remember, a week ago, we were high temperatures into the 20s, so quite a nice change as the weather pattern is still active, and we have a couple weather systems coming in from the northwest, one right here for tonight, the next one, that'll give us our better chance of a little precipitation Tuesday night into Wednesday morning. Here tonight, with increasing clouds, there might be a light chance of some drizzle off towards the north, and maybe a shower or two southeast Oklahoma, but overall, just some increasing clouds. Tomorrow, increasing clouds and a chance of a couple showers. Here later on into the evening and overnight, the quick weather system is out of here by Wednesday morning. This is a weak one. Here tonight, like I mentioned, maybe some drizzle, light freezing drizzle if temperatures, and we have enough moisture, will be into the upper 20s. Does not look like a big issue of any conditions on the roadways, but just a possibility out there with temperatures in the 20s as a first front swings through. Tomorrow, a little bit cooler, morning clouds, afternoon sunshine, 40s and 50s, and then there's that weak weather system that comes in tomorrow night into Wednesday with a couple chances of showers. But we get rid of the cold air, and a big warm-up is on the way as we head towards later this week into the weekend. Make those weekend plans. A couple showers Tuesday night into Wednesday, a little bit cooler on Wednesday, and then 60s return, middle 60s, sunshine, and a south breeze this coming weekend. We'll be back.
are looking live over the state capitol from our chopper as we are in extended coverage of the State of the State address expected minutes from now. Glad you're with us. I'm Lisa Monahan.
And I'm News on 6's Reagan Ledbetter. We're here at Griffin Media, proud to bring you full coverage of Governor Kevin Stitt's final State of the State address, utilizing the resources of both of our stations.
Now we're less than 10 minutes away from the governor taking the podium to begin his final address to the legislature.
And we do want to pass along some programming notes, as many people will be tuning in for the governor's speech. But because of the State of the State, for those of you in the Oklahoma City market, The Bold and Beautiful will air overnight at 1:37, and for both Oklahoma City and Tulsa, Beyond the Gates will air at 2:07 a.m. Now, one of the things I'll be watching for in the governor's speech is what, if anything, he says on the topic of immigration.
Yeah, it's probably the biggest issue in the country right now, and certainly one here in Oklahoma City. It's a hot button topic nationwide, as we're talking about here, following the state law House Bill 4156, which passed in 2024, the governor's Operation Guardian. Kevin Stitt now says individual states need a bigger seat at the federal table. We want to go to Haley Hetrick at the Capitol now. She's in the rotunda live for us. Haley?
Hey, Lisa and Reagan, it's definitely a hot button topic, like you guys said, one that we are expecting to hear from the governor in his State of the State address. I talked to him on Friday, and here's what he said about the issue.
I think the governors need a seat at the table to work with the federal administration to actually match up these workforce permits with people that are chasing the American dream. Now, if you're on government assistance or welfare, we don't want them in our country, right? But if you're chasing the American dream, if you're actually meeting a need for our economy, then sure.
The governor did not discuss any specific policy desires or ideas when it comes to immigration, but he did say that Oklahoma is number 3 in deporting violent criminals from both state and county jails. Now that follows Texas and Florida, which are both border states. That comes largely from laws and executive orders passed out of this building over the last 2 years in partnerships between the state and OHP. And as we saw earlier, there are quite a few protesters, both inside and outside, talking about immigration issues. We're expecting to hear from them later as well. Live at the Capitol for Oklahoma Zone, I'm Haley Hetrick.
And of course, another big topic is going to be protesters, as immigration is hot button topic right now. And Deanne Stein is outside the Capitol, keeping an eye on that, as many of those protesters have now moved inside the Capitol Rotunda. Deanne?
That's right. You can see behind me, they've all moved indoors. But this morning, this rally brought out, I guess, about 36 people, a little more outside on the steps of the Capitol this morning. They were representing about 16 different organizations. And immigration, like you said, was a major focus, but education was also front and center. Advocates with the Advance Oklahoma Kids Coalition said they are actually following more than 16 education initiatives this session, saying the focus should shift from what they oppose to what helps Oklahoma kids, including retaining teachers with better pay, school safety, and improving student outcomes. Many say they are hopeful about positive education bills moving forward.
There's a lot of legislation out there looking at outcomes and literacy and things like that. Now, we may not all agree on the inner workings, but those are gonna move and change a lot over the course. So it is kind of a positive change to see that we do have a lot of really positive legislation out there.
Again, as you can see, the protesters and the rally has moved indoors ahead of the governor's address. Back to you.
Deanne, thank you. We are just minutes away from the governor giving his 8th and final State of the State address. We're going to take a quick break before that happens.
Now we expect Governor Stitt to deliver his State of the State address in minutes. Stay right here with us. We're back after this.
Welcome back. Now, this is a live look inside the House chamber at the Capitol as we are just minutes away from Governor Kevin Stitt giving his 8th and final State of the State address.
Now, our Capitol reporter Haley Hetrick in the Rotunda live there for us, telling us she saw Governor Kevin Stitt go into the chambers moments ago.
Now, we talk often about how long is it going to take the governor to get to the podium to start giving his speech. I'd imagine it'll be a while this time, soaking it all in, his 8th year as governor of the state of Oklahoma, and he's got a lot of visitors on hand for his speech today.
If past years are any indication, we do know that he often shakes hands and talks to folks on his way to the podium. Each and every year, as tradition, he has invited special guests to attend his State of the State. We are not sure exactly how many have been invited, but we're eager to see. It typically connects to his policies that he will be pushing for. Education policy being a big one this year for him. We know that he is looking to ask the legislature to make the state superintendent of schools an appointed position, as he was able to do with Lyndall Fields late last year. We do know that he wants to take that and make it the next governor's appointment versus putting it on a ballot.
No doubt a different tone around education in Oklahoma this year than it was last year. Last year, we're talking about Ryan Walters being under the leadership of education in Oklahoma, and that was a hot button topic. There was a lot of tension and heat around that, and the governor addressed that in his State of the State. This year, I'd say the hot button topic, and the big question is he going to address it, is immigration enforcement. We've seen what's happened in Minnesota, and so how does the governor weigh and balance how he addresses immigration, and how much does he include that in his speech today?
We do know we've had our Deanne Stein outside of the Capitol for much of the morning, as we've seen many protesters assemble outside of the Capitol ahead of a State of the State address. Comparing it to years prior, not as many as in years past, but definitely a showing of both those in protest and those in support of what the legislature will do in 2026.
No doubt, and I think we expected a large crowd outside the Capitol. There were some people out there earlier, a couple dozen, as Deanne Stein said. Those have now moved inside the Capitol Rotunda, which they have the right to do. They can be inside the Capitol. It's a public building. Have to go through security like everybody else. And so it'll be interesting to see how that's handled. You can see them bringing the flags in right now. As again, we're just minutes away from Governor Kevin Stitt giving his final State of the State address. We've had team coverage since 11 o'clock this morning. Emery Bryan, he's been handling the tribal angle of this as the governor. There's been some tension with the tribes going back several years now. And, you know, he addressed the tribes to start his speech last year. And so we're curious to see what does he do this year? And, you know, tribal compacts and, you know, the hunting and fishing rights of tribal members. And that's been a big topic right now for the tribes. And Haley Hetrick, like I said, sat down with the governor last week and talked a lot about education. The governor has said his priority going into this final year is going to be education. And I think people are focused on education. They want to know what the future looks like, because Lyndall Fields has said that he doesn't want to do this for the long term. He is filling in now after Ryan Walters and wants to take over. But as you said, the governor wants that position to be appointed to take the politics out.
You know, I reviewed his speech from last year, and he had said, we have a wealth of natural resources to make our state the best place to do business. Oil and gas giants like Devon, Continental, and ONEOK. And then just this morning, as he talked about big business last year in the State of the State, I'm interested, you know, they have speech writers that will help them craft these State of the State addresses, but big news coming down this morning that Devon is merging and will be moving to Houston. So interested to see if there have been any last minute changes, if he'll be touching on that.
No doubt the timing is probably tough for the governor. I mean, big news this morning. Energy, obviously a massive deal in Oklahoma. And so the big news of Devon moving its headquarters out of Oklahoma and to Houston, no doubt a big news right there. The governor started his speech last year right on business, talking about Oklahoma being a top 10 state in the country for business. Said our economy is the strongest it's ever been. So what does it look like this year? Is he going to start things off with that, talking about tax cuts, or is he going to focus on immigration because it's what people are paying attention to right now? Or is it going to be education, which the majority of Oklahomans of all ages are focused on that topic?
And certainly, if you're just joining us, the State of the State address is an opportunity for the governor to lay out plans for the governor and the legislature in 2026. What it would mean for your wallet, for your schools, for your homes. All of these topics will be tackled. And, you know, education policy has been a big one for him. He had said he wanted to have early intervention in reading. Obviously, Oklahoma not ranking too great in the last year in terms of education, and that affects every home.
And you mentioned the different topics. That's a big reason why we are doing this statewide noon show here for the Governor's State of the State, is because all of these issues, big or small, affect all Oklahomans. So it's important for us as Griffin Media to pool all of our resources together and provide statewide coverage so you're seeing everything as we see it. And you can see now, have you seen the governor come in yet? Not quite. We're still a few minutes away. As I mentioned, he's probably going to take a little longer this time as it's his final address.
As we look in the crowd here inside the chambers to see if Governor Kevin Stitt has entered yet, we can take a listen in for just a moment to see where we're at in the process.
Speaker of the House appoint members from the Senate and House respectively as a joint committee to notify the governor that the second regular session of the 60th Oklahoma Legislature is assembled in joint session and ready to receive him and hear his message.
You've heard the motion. All those in favor say aye. Aye. All opposed say nay. Ayes have it. Motion is adopted. As President of the Senate, I'm appointing the following senators to serve on the Governor's Escort Committee: Senator Howard, Senator Weaver, Senator Pugh, Senator Hamilton. Speaker Hilbert appoints the following representatives from the House: Representative John Pfeiffer, Representative Chad Caldwell, Representative Mark LePack, Representative Chris Kennedy, and Representative Ken Luttrell. The chair recognizes Senate Sergeant at Arms Wesley Brown for an announcement.
Mr. President, the Joint Committee from the House and the Senate and the Chief Executive, the Honorable Kevin Stitt, Governor.
And there he is now, Governor Kevin Stitt, making his way into the House chamber as we await his final State of the State address, his 8th year as governor of our state. And as I mentioned earlier, this may be a slower, he's got a cast on his hand too. If you just noticed that.
Yes, we're not sure what that is all about there, but we do know he is expected to talk a lot about the past 7 years. You know, the state has seen record savings. The grocery tax cuts have always been a big topic for Governor Kevin Stitt, and significant growth in Oklahoma, making us a top 10 in business, has been a top priority of Governor Stitt's during his term.
No doubt, and with it being his last State of the State, we'll see how long it takes him to come in and welcome people. Again, this is the start of the legislative session that runs for the next several months. Everybody's back in Oklahoma City at the Capitol. Lawmakers, filing bills and getting things going as we move into the 2026.
Reagan, just hearing from our producers that we can confirm Governor Kevin Stitt cut his hand opening a bottle, so probably a minor situation there, depending on how deep the cut.
Yeah, it totally caught me off guard. I saw him shaking hands, and I'm like, wait, there's a cast
unusual
on his hand. That's different.
Might speed up the handshake process here, but obviously this is a big moment for him. This is expected to be his legacy speech. This is his final State of the State address. We've heard from him each and every year, so we think he'll probably reflect on all that has been accomplished and what he wants to have accomplished here in his last year.
And here he is stepping in. Lieutenant Governor Matt Pinnell is introducing Governor Stitt right now. We'll see what he has to say. Let's listen in.
Recognize my friend, the Chief Executive, our Governor, Kevin Stitt.
Thank you so much. Thank you. It's great to be here. Thank you all so much. Man, welcome everybody. Lieutenant Governor Matt Pinnell, it has been a great honor to serve alongside you for the last 7 years. You have done an amazing job. And Speaker Kyle Hilbert and President Pro Tem Lonnie Paxton, thank you so much for your leadership in this building. It's been an honor to serve with you guys. And members of the 60th legislature and all the statewide elected officials, I'm looking forward to serving with you and working with you this session. Members of the judiciary, thank you so much for being here today and for your service to the great state of Oklahoma. I really, really appreciate it. To my cabinet members, thank you for your service to our great state. And I want to extend a special thank you to those who have served with me from the very beginning. Secretary Blaine Arthur and Secretary Tim Gatz. Your dedication to the state of Oklahoma and the people we serve will continue to pay dividends for generations to come. And to my boomerang team, David Ostro, Donnell Harder, and John Budd, we started together in 2019. Thank you for returning to state service to help me to complete Oklahoma's turnaround. And how about those world champion Oklahoma City Thunder? A team that embodies the true spirit of Oklahoma. And I'm excited to have Will Searing and Dan Mahoney from the Thunder executive team here today. Thank you for bringing a championship home. And to my mom and dad, thank you for being here today. Your prayers and support have been invaluable throughout my life. I'm so grateful for you. To my brothers, I've got Kent and Keith in the audience. Thank you for everything you've meant to me in my life. I appreciate y'all being here. To my children, I've got Drew and Remington and Houston and Piper here. Being your dad is the greatest job in the world. Thank you for the sacrifices that you've made so that I could serve our state. I did so you and your fellow Oklahomans could chase your American dream. And to the most beautiful and elegant First Lady in the entire country, you've kept our family strong. You've been a constant source of wisdom and prayer, and you've been my steadfast partner throughout our marriage. Thank you, and I love you. I thank God for this opportunity to stand before you today to deliver my 8th State of the State address. As King Solomon prayed for wisdom, that's been my prayer and will continue to be for this last session and for those who come after me. And to my fellow Oklahomans, it's been the honor of my lifetime to serve as your governor. It's amazing to see how much we've accomplished together over the last 7 years. The state of our state is the strongest it's ever been. And ladies and gentlemen, we're not done yet. When I first addressed this chamber in 2019, before I had any idea what challenge awaited us, I promised a turnaround for our state. I cast a clear vision for Oklahoma to be a top 10 state. But to understand where Oklahoma's going, it helps to remember how America even came to be. And in our 250th year as a nation, we reflect on that story. Our story is one built on gritty ambition. It's a story where nothing was given, but everything is possible. Where your future could be determined not by the circumstances of your birth, instead by what you are willing to work hard to build. That spirit, the belief that opportunity is earned, not inherited, and that you can achieve anything that you set your mind to is the heartbeat of the United States of America. Oklahoma is not just part of this American dream. We are its purest expression. And this spirit is what has always defined Oklahoma. Oklahoma is where bold dreams are possible. And I believe these last 7 years have been the greatest in state history. We've gone from budget deficits to historic savings. We've increased public education funding more in my term as governor than they did for 25 years combined. Look at that unity. We got the president of OU and OSU holding hands back there. At the same time, we've cut taxes by $1.6 billion. We diversified our economy, maintaining one of the lowest unemployment rates in the nation. We've seen median income increase by nearly $11,000. And while other states were locking down during COVID, forcing vaccine mandates, or letting boys play in girls' sports, we protected individual liberties. We protected religious freedoms. We gave Oklahomans a true second chance by shrinking our prison population by 25% while maintaining record low recidivism. We've shown the nation why Oklahoma is the best place to pursue the American dream. Now, as we enter this session, let's keep this momentum going by uniting around three principles: reduce regulation, protect the vulnerable, and secure our state's future. In 2019, with no money in reserves, I insisted that we limit our spending and we build up our savings account. I slammed the brakes on spending every dime we were authorized. And that approach protected Oklahoma so we could make capital improvements without growing headcount. I'm so excited that I'm going to end my term with fewer state employees than when we started in 2019. True sustainable budgeting demands discipline. Let's work together this year to ensure we don't go back to the financial mess we inherited in 2019. Recent federal shutdowns and a $38 trillion federal debt, it shows us that the federal government isn't a reliable partner. It's essential that we maintain a conservative financial position. Let's be cautious with unfunded mandates, with new agencies, new programs. There's going to be 6,200 bills considered this session. 6,200. Every bill will come with a trade-off, and those often come in the form of spending more money. Over the years, I've vetoed multiple spending bills that have added to our reoccurring expenses. Yet many of those vetoes were overridden. Tallying it all up, veto overrides of spending bills have cost the taxpayers nearly $800 million in my time as governor. That's enough to cut another point off of the income tax. We have to stand up for the taxpayers and advocate for the future of our state. A government program rarely fixes a societal problem, but it sure makes some lobbyists rich. Like Ronald Reagan said, you eventually run out of other people's money. Last year, with your partnership, we delivered one of the greatest budget reform wins in history, the path to zero income tax, effectively capping in statute spending to protect the taxpayers. To preserve this progress, I'm calling for a state question on the ballot. Let's codify a 3% annual cap on reoccurring spending growth in our Constitution. And let's lock in future cuts with ironclad rules. This keeps the growth of government in check, and it protects the Oklahoma taxpayer. And where I have the authority, I'll rein in welfare spending. Government dependency is a trap. It robs self-reliance, and it balloons budgets. I always say government programs should be a trampoline, not a hammock. But too often that's not the case. Medicaid is Exhibit A. It's driving massive spending growth while enabling waste. In 10 years, Medicaid is projected to eat up 37% of our annual budget, $6 billion. We have to make a change. My recent executive order ramps up work requirements on vetting for Medicaid, SNAP, and other federal welfare benefits. But I need your help. I'm calling on the legislature to send a question to voters that would allow adjustments to Medicaid expansion so that we protect the program for those who really need it, not those who should be working. When I ran for office, I promised Oklahomans a $2 billion savings account. No one believed we could do it. The newspapers ran headlines challenging the idea. Today, with your partnership, we have shattered records, holding the largest cash reserves in state history, over $5.5 billion at its peak. Today, I call on the legislature to create the Taxpayer Endowment Fund, seeding it with $750 million of existing savings. Let's imagine what's possible. $750 million invested today can turn into $3.2 billion in just 20 years, generating sustainable revenue every year. Proven sovereign wealth funds in red states like Wyoming, and Alaska and Texas are already doing this successfully. Let's lock in these gains and let them grow for the future. Last week, 1,000 Oklahomans were born. One of them is very special to me, my first grandson. My wife said, you become a granddad and then you slip and fall and hurt your hand. These new Oklahomans are the reason we're all here. President Trump is championing a pathway to secure the American dream for the next generation. Now, through the Trump accounts, when a child turns 18, they have a launch pad to buy a home, to start a business, or go to college. And now, thanks to the incredible private sector leadership, momentum is building nationwide. Michael Dell, the founder of Dell Technologies, who's an American dream story himself, he stepped up with a $6.25 billion investment in these accounts. Oklahoma is the epicenter of the American dream, and we can and should invest in these accounts for every Oklahoma kid born this year. If we reappropriate $12 million of existing funds, we can add $250 to every Oklahoma kid's account this year. But let's not stop there. I invite our great Oklahoma businesses to be a part of this movement. I've already spoken to Williams and Continental, who are looking at ways they can contribute and invest in the children of their employees. I have Chad Zimmerman, CEO of Williams, here with us today. Thank you, Chad, for championing the next generation of Oklahomans and for everything you do for the oil and gas industry. And I guess I'm going to break the news. You said y'all are doing $1,000 for every kid born that works for Williams. It's amazing. Together, we're not just talking about the American dream. We're securing it for the next generation. For the past 7 years, as I've traveled around Oklahoma, I've learned what the American dream means to us. Oklahomans aren't waiting for the American dream, they're building it for themselves. It's the freedom to start a business or nonprofit. For others, it's the freedom to buy a home. For nearly 250 years, the American dream has been rooted in the promise of home ownership. A place to raise a family, build a future, and pass something on to the next generation. Here in Oklahoma, that dream runs deep. Our forefathers chased opportunity in the land run of 1889, staking claims on unassigned lands and building communities from the ground up. This chamber sits on top of that history. We are the heirs of their American dream. Like in 1889, Oklahoma is once again attracting new pioneers. Because of our commitment to limited government and protecting the Oklahoma way of life, our state is the very best state in the country. And for the third straight year, Oklahoma is top 10 for people moving into our state. We are headed in the right direction, and the world is taking notice. More businesses, more people, more demand for housing, which means higher property values. And as our property values rise, so do property taxes. Too many Oklahomans, veterans, seniors, young families, they are feeling the pressure. Many are concerned they're being priced out of the American dream. We owe Oklahomans real relief, not temporary fixes and election cycle talking points. We can't lose the momentum of this moment. I'm calling for a state question that freezes property tax growth across the board. Send it to the people. For some, the American dream might look like a home, but it starts with a strong education. We know that when you're young, you learn to read. And you grow older, you read to learn. No career pathway program, no workforce initiative, no intervention later in school can succeed if students cannot read well. And too many of our students are not reading at grade level. But let's be honest with ourselves. This challenge isn't new, and it isn't limited to early literacy. Oklahoma's public schools have lagged in outcomes for some time, holding our state back. It's not because our teachers are less dedicated. It's not because our students are less capable. It's not because we haven't spent enough money. It's because the system itself was flawed. For decades, students were assigned to schools based solely on their zip code, meaning by where their parents could afford to buy a house. Those schools were highly regulated, government-run, and built around a one-size-fits-all model. That's how our system was. So we injected competition into the system. First, we passed open transfer, so kids could get out of a failing school district. And I want to shout out Norman Public Schools for accepting open transfer with open arms. They've remained #1 year after year for accepting new students into their district. And right now on the second floor, in the blue room, there is a group of Norman High students listening right now. And as a fellow graduate of Norman High, thank you for being here, and go Tigers. But at the end of it all, a student can transfer to a new school, but if they want to excel in athletics, their opportunity may be blocked by an unelected and unaccountable high school sports association, the OSSAA. Last year, we heard stories of students who followed the rules, did everything right to transfer schools, and yet the OSSAA denied them the chance to play basketball at their new school. Their parents had to hire a lawyer and go to court just so their kids could get to play at their new school. That's unacceptable. Your ability to play sports shouldn't be contingent on your parents' ability to afford an attorney. It's time to eliminate the OSSAA and secure our progress with open transfer. Next, we expanded access to charter schools. Our statewide charter board was a great reform, but we still let local school districts block new charters from opening. Listen, you shouldn't have to get permission from McDonald's to open a Burger King across the street. If we want top-tier charters to come to Oklahoma, they should be able to go straight to the statewide board authorization instead of playing Mother May I with the local school district. Finally, we passed the most impactful education reform in our history, the parental choice tax credit. To finish the work on this achievement, it's time to make the program available to every Oklahoma family who wants it. Let's eliminate the cap. Let the money follow the student. Put parents in charge. Encourage competition and excellence. This past year has been a turnaround year at the Oklahoma State Department of Education. I'm proud to have appointed Lyndall Fields, who is leading that effort. He's brought a much-needed culture change to our state. Oklahoma has always elected its state superintendent. Every 4 years, a new candidate runs for that office, promising parents a new solution, more programs, more money, more accountability, more flexibility, on and on. Is the problem really that we haven't yet found the magic policy idea? Or is it that we have a politics problem? 38 other states appoint their superintendent rather than electing them. It keeps the focus on outcomes instead of politics. Leadership alignment matters. That's why Oklahoma's next governor should have the authority to appoint the superintendent of education. I'm grateful to Speaker Hilbert and Pro Tem Paxton's leadership on this issue. It's common sense. Let's get it done. As governor, my top priority has always been keeping Oklahomans safe. One of the greatest threats to public safety is the out-of-control marijuana industry. When Oklahomans voted to legalize medical marijuana in 2018, we were sold a bill of goods. Out-of-state liberal activists preyed on the compassionate nature of Oklahomans. Then it opened up Pandora's box. Now we have more dispensaries than we do pharmacies. Think about that. These storefronts hide an industry that enables cartel activity, human trafficking, and foreign influence in our state. Adria Berry at the Oklahoma Medical Marijuana Authority and Donnie Anderson at the Oklahoma Bureau of Narcotics have done an incredible work to hold back the tide of illegal activity. This industry is plagued by foreign criminal interests and bad actors, making it nearly impossible to rein in. We can't put a Band-Aid on a broken bone. And knowing what we know now, it's time to let Oklahomans bring safety and sanity back to their neighborhoods. Send the marijuana issue back to a vote of the people, and let's shut it down. As I've spent time reflecting, there's one great challenge that will remain. To those of you in this chamber and those yet to serve, I implore you to fight for one Oklahoma, for fairness, transparency, and for state sovereignty. I'm proud of Oklahoma's heritage. From the Native Americans who lived on this land and those who participated in the land run to statehood, we have an amazing history. When Justice Gorsuch, in a 5-4 decision in July of 2020, decided that half of our state was a reservation, I became the first governor who had to face this new challenge. In the wake of the McGirt decision, I have worked tirelessly to hold the line to keep one Oklahoma and to protect the rights of every Oklahoman. We need to come together and protect the vision that was cast in 1907. We need to stop any effort to federalize half of our state. That's why it's so important that we elect men and women of integrity. And I want to make a few truths abundantly clear. Number one, all laws should apply equally to all Oklahomans, no exceptions. An Indian named Kevin Stitt shouldn't be treated differently than a single mom of a different race. If you commit a crime in Oklahoma, you should be prosecuted by a duly elected Oklahoma district attorney. You should be tried in an Oklahoma court overseen by a duly elected Oklahoma judge. And you should be protected by the rights laid out in the Oklahoma Constitution. Your race shouldn't call any of these factors into question. Number three, if you live in Oklahoma, if you drive on Oklahoma roads, you attend Oklahoma schools, you vote in Oklahoma elections, you absolutely should not have different tax treatment than any other Oklahoman. These things shouldn't be controversial. I challenge Oklahomans to elect people who are committed to these values and protect these simple truths. Game wardens shouldn't be afraid to ticket poachers. District attorneys shouldn't be afraid to prosecute criminals. Local sheriffs shouldn't be afraid to enforce the law. Many of us in this room have decried the DEI programs of the Biden administration, yet stand quietly by when some say an Indian should be subject to a different set of laws. We either believe in equal rights for all or we don't, and it's time to choose. This issue will continue to split our state, both literally and figuratively, unless we address it head on. It will be uncomfortable, and you're going to have to face down the state's largest political donors. But we must continue to fight for one Oklahoma. Every year, there are challenges to address and hurdles to clear. And we get to decide, are we going to meet the moment? Every year, while we disagree and argue about some things, we come together and work for the good of our state. I enter this session with more optimism than ever. Let's dream big. We've proven to the world that Oklahoma is second to none. It's a state that promotes innovation, champions freedom, and creates opportunities for its people. Oklahoma wasn't built by government planners or bureaucrats. Oklahoma was built by entrepreneurs, risk takers, and innovators who believe in free markets and the American dream. This idea that if you work hard, you take risks, and you create value, you should be rewarded. There is much more to come for our state. Opportunities we couldn't even have imagined 7 years ago are knocking on our door, asking to be part of the turnaround here in our state. As we enter into 2026, I hope our discussions are full of potential and shared optimism. Let's pursue the well-being of Oklahomans instead of our own self-interest. Ronald Reagan, prior to his political career, he gave a speech called A Time for Choosing. It's a powerful speech exploring the role of government and the welfare state. I'll challenge you to go home and read that speech. He concludes by saying, you and I have a rendezvous with destiny. We'll preserve for our children this, the last best hope of man on earth, or we'll sentence them to take the last step into 1,000 years of darkness. He's reminding us that we have to teach our children that there is no such thing as equal outcomes, only opportunities. The decisions we make in this building should not be made solely under the consideration of our next election or the leadership post we hope for next session. They should not be made in pursuit of favor with lobbyists or special interest groups, or a job when you want to get done with your service. Every decision we make here must be in pursuit of the good of Oklahoma's future. The turnaround started here in 2019. It's been an amazing journey, and it's up to us to preserve the American dream for the next generation. Our choices will take us to the next level or back to the struggles we've turned away from. We have a rendezvous with destiny. Let's grab it with the tenacity and grit that sets us apart as Oklahomans. May God bless you, and may God continue to bless the great state of Oklahoma. Let's have a great 26.
There it is, Governor Kevin Stitt giving his final State of the State address, his 8th as governor of the state of Oklahoma. About half-hour long speech, a little touch over a half hour there, as we expected the governor to talk about a lot of things. Didn't come out of his speech talking about things that he plans to do this year, really recapped what he's done, what he's accomplished the last 7 years in his tenure.
He thanked so many, specifically calling out world champions, the Oklahoma City Thunder, and his family, which is to be expected. He called it an honor of a lifetime to serve Oklahoma. And he said something that really stuck with me. He said, you know, Oklahoma's story is one of gritty ambition. I like that as an Oklahoman myself. I'm sure you do as well. He said this is where bold dreams are possible, and that's kind of what led into his speech and discussing many of the policies he wants to tackle in 2026.
When you mentioned that American dream, he talked a lot about American dream for Oklahomans, and says many Oklahomans feel they're priced out of the American dream, and so he has plans in place to try to help with that. Some of the topics that he talked about were welfare, government dependency being a trap, government programs should be a trampoline to spring forward people rather than a hammock, is what he referred to that as.
You know, what I thought was really interesting is he sort of began with saying, we want to send a lot of issues to the people. We want to put some state questions on the ballot and have Oklahomans decide what happens on a number of issues, including slowing the growth of government. He said he wants to rein in welfare spending. That was one of the issues tackled, as well as ending automatic property taxes, which affects so many Oklahomans here in the state. He said we owe Oklahomans some real relief, and that would be to freeze the property tax growth here in the state of Oklahoma. So he wants to put it to a ballot, put it to voters.
That's across the board. That's a topic that impacts so many people. One of the other big ones he kind of talked about towards the end, there's the list right there of the conservative state questions the governor has planned that he wants to put in the hands of the people to make a decision on right there. A 3% annual cap on spending growth. ending automatic property tax hikes, and that's, like he said, across the board. That's something that when he talks about the American dream and people feeling priced out of that, and a big part of the American dream is being able to own a home. But the governor talked a lot about how property taxes doubling or tripling year after year, people can't keep up. And so that was another topic. Another one talked a lot about was the medical marijuana industry, and basically said that once medical marijuana was passed in 2018, it opened Pandora's box, and the state has been infiltrated by foreign organized crime rings that have taken over the state of Oklahoma, and he wants to put that in a state question, and he said, shut that down. And he said there's actually more dispensaries in Oklahoma than there are pharmacies. You know, and Governor Kevin Stitt has always been a big proponent of safety. This comes down to safety in neighborhoods, your neighbor not being someone, he said, a member of the cartel that's bringing in drug trafficking and human trafficking into neighborhoods where your children are in the front yards or the backyards playing. And so he said, you know, although voters approved this issue, putting medical marijuana here in the state of Oklahoma, he wants to send it back to a vote. And so that will be a very interesting topic that we'll be watching closely across the state. And two topics that we expected to hear about today, we were wondering if you would hear about, was Devin, the big announcement from Devin today, as well as immigration. Didn't hear really anything about either one of those topics, but one thing we were expecting to hear about was tribal relations. And the governor talked a lot about the McGirt, the Supreme Court ruling on tribal jurisdiction. He's the only governor in Oklahoma that's had to deal with that. And he kind of ended his speech with some pretty strong words, saying all laws should apply equally to all Oklahomans. And what he says by that is there shouldn't be a different set of rules or a way crimes are prosecuted based off if someone is tribal or not tribal. You know, I think there was education policy in general was going to be pretty high priority with this speech, you know, as well as, you know, the superintendent. We've heard for many months now, the governor has said that he wants to make this an appointed position. He appointed State Superintendent Lyndall Fields, and we know that he wanted to ask the legislature to do that. He touched on that, as well as eliminating the Oklahoma Secondary School Activities Association, you commonly hear as OSSAA, and he says that we need to rid the state of this association in order to continue to embrace the open transfer. As we saw, the Glencoe basketball team had a big issue in the last year we covered heavily here, where they had to hire attorneys and fight to be able to play basketball after transferring there. You know, every year, as a tradition, Governor Kevin Stitt has invited folks to attend his State of the State address specific to the policies he wants to tackle in the next year. And he had the CEO of Williams Energy up in Tulsa, where you live, Reagan, and he said that they're pouring into that American dream, so he had him there, as well as that he invited Norman High students there. Learning today that Governor Kevin Stitt said he's from Norman High, and he really wanted to make it a point to highlight how they had embraced the open transfer with open arms. He said that they had the highest number of transfers there in the Norman School District. And he said that the governing body of the OSSAA shouldn't be able to dictate if a student's able to transfer from school to school based on academics, but if they want to excel in their sport, then it brings in the OSSAA to make a decision, oftentimes denying, which was the issue with Glencoe schools. And so the governor said that, you know, students who want to play sports shouldn't have to rely on parents who have enough money to be able to hire attorneys to fight to get their student to be able to transfer. But as I mentioned before the governor's address, total different tune around education in Oklahoma. As a year ago, under the leadership of Ryan Walters, I don't think we would have seen a standing ovation as we saw for Lyndall Fields. Lyndall Fields is who Governor Kevin Stitt appointed to be the state superintendent for public education here in Oklahoma, and he got a round of applause, standing ovation by everybody in the chamber. Well, he also pointed out at one point, if you're just joining us, that he kind of called attention to OU and OSU's president holding shaking hands. Shaking hands, if you will. He said holding hands. So, you know, a lot of major topics that affect every single Oklahoman touched on here today. And that is why, if you're just joining us, we have been bringing you statewide coverage of the State of the State address. We've been on our digital platforms, on the Oklahoma Zone Politics channel, as well as Facebook and X, and here on News 9 and News on 6, both in Oklahoma City and Tulsa. Yeah, we want to make sure you guys know that after this, we'll have a full breakdown on our YouTube channel, the Oklahoma's own Politics YouTube channel. That started at 11 o'clock this morning, went into a statewide noon newscast, and now our team, Jonathon Cooper, Scott Mitchell, our reporters, Emery Bryant, Haley Hetrick, Deanne Stein, Alex Cameron, many others are going to give us a live breakdown of the governor's final State of the State address. Again, you can find that at the Oklahoma's own Politics YouTube channel. They'll be breaking all of this down for us.
Now, for Reagan Ledbetter, I'm Lisa Monahan, and we appreciate you joining us. We're going to send it now to you digital and joining Scott and Jonathon.
Streaming from Oklahoma's own digital studio, this is the State of the State, the future of Oklahoma.
Good afternoon. I'm Jonathon Cooper, joined by Scott Mitchell. You just listened in on Governor Kevin Stitt's final State of the State address. It was about a 30-minute speech or so. He addressed a lot of things we expected him to address. He also addressed some things that we may not have predicted as well. We have a lot to break down. We have reporters spread out throughout the Capitol that are talking to lawmakers right now. And Scott, first off, I just want to ask you, what did you think of that speech?
Well, there's a lot of work to be done. I mean, he's laid out a big agenda, not just for the legislature, but putting some of these issues to the public. And those are going to be very expensive conversations at the end of the day, and they're very impactful.
So I think the headline from this, when people look at this on the news tonight, when they read their newspaper, the big ones, he's calling for a lot of issues to go back to the voters.
Right.
One of them is something we see every day just driving down the street, medical marijuana. He wants that to go back to the voters, and he's asking lawmakers to send it to the voters. This isn't something where lawmakers can come in and just say, we're going to get rid of this.
Right. It's in the Constitution.
Yeah, a lot of these issues, when they involve the Constitution, it requires a vote of the people. Some other ones, to codify 3% annual cap on recurring spending, of course. That's something he's really talked about, of cutting spending. End automatic property tax hikes. And reform Medicaid expansion. He says in 10 years, 37% of our budget is going to be Medicaid. So your thoughts on those, sending some of these issues back to the voters? A couple of them got standing ovations.
Yeah, and I will tell you the thing that is interesting. One is nobody envisioned what medical marijuana was going to do. You look at all the marijuana that's being sold in Oklahoma, and you think that's medical? You know, come on, man. I mean, it's insane. And that's an aspect, as you just mentioned, you cannot just change that. There has to be some changes. The Bureau of Narcotics is now an enormous agency, also tied to this industry, human trafficking, okay? And we have agents over there who have to speak, many languages because there's so much cartel activity dealing with this. When you see Mark Woodward on television talking about the problems, the property tax issue, it's a gigantic issue. People are feeling it. They're angry. And there have been recommendations for abolishing the system all the way to fix it. It has to be sent to the public. He wants to appoint the superintendent of public instruction. That's got to go. But there were some other things, though, Jonathon, that were just out there that are involved in education. And you knew this one was coming. Eliminate OSSAA. They were asking for some sort of action the way they behaved last fall. And they're getting it, and they got a standing O as well.
Yeah, that's a big headline, one we're going to talk about more. Let's go now to Emery Bryant. He's live right now with a guest. Emery, who do you have, and what do you have for us? And actually, we're going to go to Haley Hetrick. She has somebody standing by, so Haley.
Hey guys, we're meeting up with all the gubernatorial candidates here. We have Mike Mazzei here running for governor in this next upcoming election. Just tell us, what are your thoughts of this speech?
I give it high marks. I really like Governor Kevin Stitt, particularly Haley, when he's talking about fiscal prudence. I was the governor's first secretary of budget, and together we helped build the state's first billion-dollar savings, and thank the Lord we did, because we needed every penny during the pandemic chaos. I also love it when he talks about cutting income taxes. On the path to becoming a no income tax state, I'm not really a fan of the current plan because by my calculations as a financial expert, it would take at least 25 years. I have a plan to make Oklahoma a no income tax state in 6 years. And imagine the economic boom we could see when we become a no income tax state and stop seeing companies like Devon move their headquarters to the no-income tax state of Texas. Let's make Oklahoma a no-income tax state, and we'll usher in a golden age of growth and prosperity.
One of the other things we heard the governor talk about was freezing any kind of upgrade on property taxes. What did you make of that?
Well, the people of Oklahoma are very frustrated about rising property taxes higher and higher and higher. Our plan is to actually abolish property taxes for seniors just as quickly as possible because they're the ones that are struggling the most on fixed incomes and these huge increases in property. And when we're talking about financial issues and way to save money, I think the people of Oklahoma were probably hoping for an explanation on this Medicaid mess that fortunately the governor did bring up. But just last week, the Oklahoma Healthcare Authority announced a $500 million shortfall. That's $500 million. Well, what makes that all the more disconcerting is in 2020, the state auditor released findings that there were $1.6 billion of questionable expenditures in the program, and after Medicaid expansion, that's got to be well over $2 billion. She delivered her audit findings to the legislature, and they did absolutely nothing with it. That's why we need a financial expert in the office of governor, and that's why I'm running.
Other than finances, what was your biggest takeaway from the speech?
Well, I'm glad that the governor said it's time to totally roll back this out-of-control approach that we've had with medical marijuana in the state of Oklahoma. The voters were given a very bad item to vote on that led to the wild, wild west of marijuana. We need to revamp that system, make it much more stringent to get a medical marijuana license, and we've got to roll back Easy Street to where anybody can grow as much as they want all over the place. As a matter of fact, as a result of the marijuana mess, we now have the Chinese Communist Party owning land all over the state of Oklahoma, and I'm already planning on executive orders day one to enforce Article 22 of the Oklahoma Constitution, which forbids foreign ownership of land, so we can evict these Chinese communists out of the state of Oklahoma.
All right, Mike Macy, thank you so much for chatting with us. I know Emory is standing over on the other side with gubernatorial candidate Getner Drummond, so we'll hear all about it coming up. I'll go ahead and toss it back to you guys.
All right, Haley, thank you so much for that report. We're joined now by State Superintendent of Education, Lyndall Fields. Thank you so much for being here. You were in there. You got a standing ovation, which I'm sure was nice to have. You've been in the role now for about 3 months, so this is your first State of the State. Scott, I know you wanted to ask him something first.
What do you think about appointing the superintendent?
We're going to get straight to it, I
Yeah.
think. Well, that's a great question. You know, when the governor asked me to take on this role, he asked me to take the politics out of it, and I think we've successfully done that. So in thinking about it over the last few months, if that will allow us to take politics out of the role, I would be for that. Now, I recognize that we can't take it completely out, but the position, I believe, being an apolitical position would be a step in the right direction.
How much politics involved in the last few years has it set us back, data-wise, would you say? And COVID, you throw that in.
Well, you know, there's quite a bit of data out there about COVID, but at some point we have to move on, right? We have to accept responsibility for our data. In terms of the politics, I'd hesitate to say how much that set us back. I just really couldn't speak to that. But the COVID days were there. They were real. But it's been a few. So I think it's time for Oklahoma to accept responsibility and move on from that.
Something we heard about is how certain states are in school longer. You know, I think Kansas is in for more than 180 days. Oklahoma, it's only 160 something. Are you in favor of lengthening the school year at all? So that's something that some lawmakers have talked about maybe doing.
Yeah, so this is something that's been around for quite some time. We allow for hours in Oklahoma, so when we compare states, we need to look at that. But the hour comparison does put us behind. So I think it's time to recalibrate. We have schools all over the place. Instructional days at 166 is where we are now, and we have schools that aren't doing that. We need to get all the schools at least up to that and start moving the needle a little bit at a time to compete and compare with other states.
You know, part of that too is the virtual days. I know next school year there's going to be no more virtual days because of what the legislature decided last year. Do you want kids to be in the classroom? Is that something you're in favor of?
Oh, sure. I think we can all agree that kids learn better inside of the classroom. Our virtual days, can kids learn that way? Sure they can. The legislature's spoken on that, going to 2 days. I think there'll be some conversations about that. There was some limits put on virtual days for professional development. You know, how much local control do we want there? 2 days. We went from unlimited to 2 days, so a big shift. I think there might be some discussions about that. But to answer your question directly, I think we can agree that kids learn better in person.
There was that cap he talked about. You know, the governor wants to remove the $250 million cap on the transfers, the tax credits. Do you have any thoughts on that at all? Is that something that you kind of let the governor deal with, or do you have any thoughts on that side of it?
Yeah, that's also a good question and a hot topic. You know, the goal of education is to develop people for the workplace, develop them for success, and ultimately increasing the economic vitality of the state. And to do that, we need private education, public education at the K-12 level, at the higher education level. The $250 million cap, let's just hypothetically say it went away. That money doesn't go to education. It goes back into the general fund. So it's not $250 million from public education. So I think we need to look at the ROI on that and how it's contributing to the economic vitality of the state. It's not a zero-sum game. So how can we work with private institutions to lift the economic vitality of the state?
You've got a big chore. You have a lot of legislators and the governor talking about the literacy issue, also the health issue, but your area, where that you have the state chambers saying, man, we're last at the SEC, we're last in the Big 12, we have got to do something, and they're pointing to Mississippi. I didn't know that I would ever live long enough to ever go, we want to be like Mississippi, but that be as it may. Right. Your thoughts about where all of the discussions on literacy, where there's going to be actual solutions getting something done?
Literacy is a very important topic, and there has been a great deal of emphasis and energy put toward Mississippi, but there's a southern surge. There's Louisiana and Tennessee, all that are making gains in literacy, and it's time for us to do something with that and just put a stake in the ground and make that a priority. We've got to read first, and that comes get kids literate before we can add anything else on. So making that a priority is important, and I think everybody agrees with that. I think that's something we can all agree on.
I know you have some meetings, so we don't want to keep you too long
Sure.
here, but you've been in the role about 3 months now. You know, it's a new year. What's next for you in terms of what do you hope to accomplish over these next several months? And I'm sure you're getting used to the role now, at least at this point.
Getting used to the role. I keep hearing about, legislative session starting, get ready, and I feel like I just got my feet under me, right? Getting some margin and making some strategic decisions inside of the agency and really figuring out exactly what our priorities are going into the session and for the year. And my goal is still just to make sure we have a good foundation for the next person. So I want to do a lot of things, but I need to be realistic. I don't want to commit the next person. So it's a tough balance. What can we accomplish, set the state up, but not put too much lindle into it? Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So I think you can continue to see strategy, leadership development at the agency with employees, becoming a service-focused organization. Our job is to support schools, plain and simple. That's our job. So you're going to continue to see an emphasis on that and how we can better serve our customers, the public schools of Oklahoma.
Yeah. Scott, you got anything else for him?
Yeah, I've got one more. You're gonna love
Here we
this.
go.
Are you ready to run high school athletics in Oklahoma? Because we've been covering this. I know I've been on this story for 10 years, and nobody ever says anything nice about OSSAA. In fact, they've been hauled into court and slapped around. It just is a terrible. And the governor today got a standing ovation on doing away with this organization, which just sort of spoke themselves into existence, right? So you've got a whole basket of things to take care of. But if you did away with it, where would it go?
Wow. You're talking about ending on a big one. So, you know, I just know this much about that organization. It's my understanding that it's a member-driven organization. It's not a state organization. So what I think you're saying is it might come to SDE. I haven't honestly thought about that until this very moment. If that's where it lands, we'll run it as beautifully as we can. But to say whether it needs to be with us or somebody else, I just couldn't say that at this point. It's so new to me.
Scott, you're adding more to the table for
right?
me.
My goodness.
Stressing them out here.
We'll cover it next week.
Yeah,
that's what we'll do.
We'll have plenty of time for that.
Sure.
Well, State Superintendent Littlefields, thank you for joining us. I know you got some meetings and you got to go eat lunch and stuff. So thanks for being here. We appreciate it.
It's good to see you both. Likewise.
Yeah.
Thanks, everybody.
Best of luck over the session. Thank you.
Thank
we
you.
want to go now to Haley Hetrick. She's got some more coverage for us. Haley?
Hey guys, I'm here with Senate Minority Leader Julia Kurt. Just to start, tell us, what were your thoughts listening to this speech?
You know, I just really felt like the governor was not in the same state I am. From what I'm hearing from the people of Oklahoma, I didn't feel like he was addressing the real challenges that we're hearing from people every day.
And then we're expecting to hear from your caucus coming up in about 30 minutes, but what are some of the things that you're focused on this year?
You know, I want to see us really dedicated to our public schools. Him bringing up the vouchers again and sending more money to private education when we don't have any evidence what that's done for kids or how that's changed our communities. We want to see that investment in our public schools. I think I'm also concerned about him wanting to set aside more taxes. He was talking about more savings. We've done lots on savings. Let's make sure we're investing money in the things that matter for kids. We've got child cares that are about to close. We have a mental health waiting list that is dangerously high, and those are the kinds of things we should be addressing.
What are some of the hurdles that you're hearing that Oklahomans are facing?
You know, the big thing is just being cost burden. You know, our rents have gone up, property insurance has gone up, and so we've heard from people they're having a hard time making it month to month. And so when we don't hear anything that touches on those big issues of affordability, it makes me think the governor's not hearing from people.
I know we're having a little bit of a tighter budget going into this year after some big one-time projects, some tax cuts. Do you have concerns about the budget for this year?
Yeah, you know, the governor has really pushed agencies to keep their budgets flat for years, and so we haven't heard the real needs of the people, and so I think it's all coming to a head right now. That's why we hear our mental health agency, our Medicaid agency, our child care system are all on the brink, and I think those are because we're artificially holding down those budgets instead of really looking at what the people need.
We heard quite a lot from the governor about sending some state questions to the people dealing with the state superintendent becoming elected, property taxes, marijuana. What was your thoughts on those?
You know, I'm glad for the people to vote, but I think two of those things he suggested are things that the people sent to us. The people passed those as citizen initiative petition, and we should respect the voters who passed Medicaid expansion. They wanted healthcare costs to go down in this state. They want our rural hospitals to survive. And I think when you talk about reversing that, you're talking about working families that need that coverage, and our rural system needs it to survive.
What are your expectations for this session? It is an election year. It's the governor's last year. Just what are you expecting in the next 4 months?
Well, I know my caucus is focused on real problems and how we can solve those real problems for everyday Oklahomans. We can get caught up here in political talking points, lots of empty promises, but what we're going to do is work every day on those bipartisan solutions and that common ground that can actually make gains for the people.
All right, Minority Leader Julia Kurt, thank you so much for talking with us today. We'll go ahead and send it back to you guys.
All right, Haley, thank you. Something that the governor also touched on for a couple of minutes, actually, was tribal relations. That's something that has been a hot topic for basically his entire time.
Since jump.
Yes, since his entire time in office. I want to read you some of what he said. He wants the next governor basically to stop any effort to federalize half of our state. That's controversial for some. The McGirt decision in 2020 reestablished the reservations in the eastern half of Oklahoma, but it has created a lot of issues when it comes to prosecuting crimes. Some of the sentences are not the same depending on if you are a Native American or you are not. We have a little bit about what the governor said just a few moments ago.
All laws should apply equally to all Oklahomans, no exceptions. An Indian named Kevin Stitt shouldn't be treated differently than a single mom of a different race. All laws should apply equally to all Oklahomans, no exceptions. An Indian named Kevin Stitt shouldn't be treated differently than a single mom of a different race.
Laughing about that because the governor himself is Native American, a member of the Cherokee Nation. And so Emory Bryan is standing by. He's kind of covering that angle of the story. And Emory has some tribal leadership with him right now. Emory, who do you have and what do you have for us?
This is Chief David Hill of the Muskogee Creek Nation, just out of the speech, and you've been to a number of these and heard the tone change quite a bit over the time that Governor Stitt's been in office, but never anything like today.
No.
Tell me about your thoughts about what you heard him say.
Well, as you well know, this is his last year of his last term, and once you have the podium, you get to say what you want to say, regardless if it's positive or negative. But today I didn't hear so much positive of working together with the tribe. Said we need to, but we've reached out. We work well with the other municipalities throughout our reservation, and just to hear that just kind of bothered me a minute. I mean, he has my phone number, has my contact. I'm always pushing for that. Let's sit down, let's work together. There's going to be uncertainties, but those can always be worked out, but never yet have I received that phone call. But we will work around the other municipalities, law enforcement, DAs, judges, to educate everyone on how this should work. So it's been working.
You said reservation. He doesn't agree that there is a reservation.
No, he totally disagrees with the Supreme Court's ruling 2020. And that did. July 9, 2020 changed history of Muskogee Creek Nation. It changed history for Oklahoma. It also changed history throughout Indian country.
What do you think when you hear him refer to your people as a different race?
That's very difficult. Him being as well as supposed to be a Cherokee citizen. I mean, he should know this is not about race. This is all about public safety, to do what's best for the people. I was born in Muskogee Creek. I'm also an Oklahoman citizen, so I have to protect on both sides. And it's all about public safety. What's best for the state of Oklahoma, what's best for each tribe. It's all about public safety. But it's only going to work if we work together. And it appears that only one side, all the tribe, is wanting to work, but except one person.
For so many years, these compacts have seemed to work quite well on gaming, on tags, tobacco, on hunting. Has your nation made any progress with the state on any of those?
Not so much. It appears that I'm still the only one on a tobacco compact that's held out. We have a lot of treaties. We have over 36 treaties with the United States, and we just want to see those honored. And it does talk about hunting and fishing license. So he has to honor those treaties, and we'll just see what happens. But I am willing to sit down and talk whenever that comes to. Looking forward to see who the new governor is. Looking forward to meeting them and having a meaningful conversation on how we're going to work together.
Chief Hill, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Appreciate you taking some time to speak with us.
You bet.
Thank you very much. That is Chief David Hill, Muskogee Creek Nation. That was the nation where the McGirt ruling came out, as you guys know, and that is what has rocked so much of the law in Oklahoma that Governor Stitt was complaining about today. That McGirt decision really galvanized that, as you know. And of course, this chief, I talked to the Cherokee Nation chief, Chuck Hoskin Jr., just a few minutes earlier, takes the same sort of exception to the terminology of referring to Native Americans and also just the judgment that the governor has made on the mere existence of this reservation that the Supreme Court says does exist, and then all of the intricacies of how the law will be handled and all those things will be handled. So as you can hear, the nations did not hear anything that they wanted to hear today. Take great exception to what they heard from the governor. Back to you.
All right, Emery Bryan live for us. The McGirt decision still in the news here 5.5 years later, and still a lot to work out with that. And we could spend 3 hours on that right now. But instead, we're going to talk to Governor Kevin Stitt's Deputy Chief of Staff, Abigail Cave. Abigail, thanks for being here. We appreciate it. You obviously knew about this speech ahead of time, worked with him on some of the stuff in it. What do you think are going to be the big headlines that people are going to be talking about afterwards from this speech?
Well, he had a couple zingers in there for sure. We're hoping that, you know, his legacy rings true through his fiscal discipline, his commitment to Oklahoma's taxpayer. We hope that's the news of the day. You heard him talk about a taxpayer endowment fund to really set Oklahoma up for that next generation to take, you know, the fiscal stewardship we've had now and to put that in a position to deliver for future generations, including his grandson. So I think you'll see that fiscal discipline moving forward.
Something I want to ask about too is, you know, driving around, you'll see a medical marijuana dispensary almost everywhere. He's calling for a big change to that. This isn't something that he or the legislature can just say, oh, we're going to get rid of medical marijuana. It has to go to a vote of the people, right?
Right.
Why does he feel that needs to be repealed? There's a lot of people right now that are watching that may have medical marijuana cards.
Absolutely, and I think when this provision was put into the Constitution in 2018, people were sold a bill of goods. They were led to believe that this was going to be a narrow solution to a narrow problem, and they didn't expect dispensaries on every corner. Or, you know, in my neighborhood, I have 2 dispensaries right next door to each other. They didn't expect this huge influx of, you know, foreign nationals buying up farmland to grow marijuana. They didn't expect their, you know, family's, you know, legacy ranch out in western Oklahoma to be taken over by a marijuana grow. They didn't expect all of this crime and these other, you know, unintended consequences to follow the industry. So, you know, the people we've talked to around Oklahoma, they're open to significant change. You know, Adria Berry and Donnie Anderson have done an admirable job trying to tie in the regulations and enforce the law. But at some point, when you have so much criminal activity in the industry, it just makes sense to shut it down.
Something Scott's been talking about for the past hour is the OSSAA, getting rid of that. And we spoke with Lyndall Fields. He didn't really have an opinion on it or anything, but why does he want to get rid of the OSSAA?
Well, if you think about it, it's a weird deal. The student, we have open transfer in our state. A student should be able to move from one school district to another, and they should be, you know, awarded all of those privileges of going to a different school. But if, you know, you're in one different category, you're not allowed to play sports at your new school, well, that's going to shut down your opportunity to maybe go get a scholarship to go to college. For some Oklahoma kids, that's their only, you know, pathway to college is a sports scholarship. So are we going to block that because a group of unelected, unaccountable bureaucrats doesn't want them to play? That seems weird to us. So there's better models to do it. Texas has a different way of doing it. Florida has a different way of doing it that protects the integrity of the sport while still giving kids the opportunity.
You know, Lyndall Fields has been working hard to take the drama out of the SDE, and OSSAA has been a drama agency. I mean, we saw what happened in the fall, and lawyers were showing up and saying, hey, you're going to regret doing this, and they still lost. And when I mentioned this to Superintendent Fields, he's like, oh, man, you can just see that more drama coming back into that agency. But it does appear, and we did a lot of stories this both in News on 6 and News 9, that people are really, really angry about this organization.
Well, you know, your kid, they show an aptitude for playing basketball or playing volleyball, and you're excited to cheer them on. You're excited to see them do what they love. And then somebody comes along and say, well, you didn't check this box right. You didn't do this one thing right, so your kid doesn't get to play. As a parent, that should outrage any of us. You know, you want your kid to have every opportunity. The governor wants that for Oklahoma kids.
Hey, but speaking of Oklahoma kids, the grandbaby, I highly recommend grandparenting. It's really cool. You don't have much free time left, but it was interesting. And he reveals grandbaby, and then he's got this gigantic bandage on his hand.
A lot of people have been asking about that.
Yeah, so we need to clear this up. Is that something that we need to know more about?
Well, he joked with somebody as we walked in that you should see the other guy. It was just a simple little accident, fell with a glass bottle in his hand and cut his pinky and just had to have a little surgery to fix up the tendon, but he will be recovered. He will be fine.
Okay.
All right. Well, a lot of people saw that, and, you know, that's the headline they're going to get from this. So you guys want that not to be the headline from it, obviously.
More policy, else cast,
Yeah.
maybe.
One more thing before we let you go. He wanted to codify a 3% annual gap on recurring spending growth. Throughout his entire administration, he's talked about less government, less spending. So why is it needed in the Constitution to protect that?
Yeah, so last year he signed the Path to Zero income tax, which is a really great start to this, you know, keeping recurring revenue stable. But it's only in statute. So a future legislature could decide, you know, we want a little bit more money to spend. So let's fix that Path to Zero to be a little more loosey-goosey. Whereas a constitutional limit on spending would be just that, it would be constitutional. So a future legislature would not be able to undo that. States like Colorado have this. They can only grow their recurring expenditures by about 3%, or I think it's population growth plus CPI every year. So the Colorado state government can't grow out of control. And, you know, people get into this building and they're just ready to spend. So the governor wants to keep that limit on there.
I don't want to make Johnson look Jonathon look bad, so I have to do one more question. So
No,
I'm just running a stop sign. This is the governor that is the chair of the NGA. High-profile job. He's out of work after this year, okay? And there's been more than one person whisper in my ear and saying, you know, this guy's got the profile that fits perhaps maybe running for president one day. And it's people that I trust. And a lot of people that I trust who are just simply going and not answering the question. So let's just go get this out there. Is the governor of Oklahoma, Kevin Stitt, thinking about running for president?
Well, I would never sign him up for a job that he has not told me he wants. So you'll have to ask him next time, but I wouldn't say there's a plan right now.
That's a non-denial denial.
We're going to write it down. We'll ask him. If we see him walking around in the hallway,
Please do.
We'll
Please
stop
do.
him. Yeah. Abigail,
thank you, Abigail.
Thank you so much for taking a few minutes.
Absolutely.
We appreciate it. Haley Hetrick has been standing by, and she has somebody that she's talking to. So, Haley, take it away.
Thanks so much for being with us. Just to start, tell us a little bit about just your reaction from what you just heard from the governor.
Yeah, so it's really exciting today. Here we are, the first day of the legislative session for 2026, and it's really the chance for the governor to pitch his this is his last legislative session for his term as governor, some of the things that he wants to be his priority items. I think there were a lot of things that we heard today that we've heard before, and so I think for a lot of people who watch Oklahoma politics, there wasn't a lot of surprises. A couple other things the governor threw out there, and I'm sure he's going to gauge what the reaction is in the coming days of those, but you know, with all of it, we'll take it through the legislative process, committee work, and hear from our constituents and stakeholders and try to determine, you know, what's best for the state of Oklahoma.
As far as your priorities and your caucus's priorities, what kind of overlapped with what the governor said, and what is maybe something that you didn't hear that you guys are focused on?
Sure. So the governor talked a little bit about early childhood literacy during his speech, and that's something that I've been talking about a lot the past 6 months, and members of my caucus, I mean, we really want to see us move the needle on that particular issue. For Oklahoma, for too many years, I feel like we have just kind of accepted being near the bottom of education rankings. And we've invested in public education, as the governor highlighted the massive increases that we put in funding for public education. But we also have to look at what can we do to improve education outcomes. And one of the great things that we have going thing for us in this particular area is that we have a state in Mississippi who's done a great job in the Mississippi Miracle in advancing and improving early childhood literacy rates. And so for Oklahoma, we know what will improve early childhood literacy scores. All we have to do is have the courage to take the vote. Oftentimes in this building, we don't have the privilege of having all the background and the data and the research. We just have to make decisions that we can with the limited availability of knowledge that we have. But this is a situation where if we take the vote, we know what will happen. We just have to do it. And so that's a big piece. The governor referenced property tax reform. He had a specific proposal he wanted to see. On all of those state questions, those are things that actually don't go to the governor's desk. The legislature, by joint resolution, can send it to a vote of the people. I anticipate there will be a lot of conversation about property tax. The final solution of what a bill will look like is still to be determined, but it's going to be a big conversation this session.
This is your second year in the leadership role, the speaker role. What would you say you learned from last year that you're taking into this year?
Well, going into your first session, there's a lot of nerves, right? Trying to figure it all out, and not just for myself, but the leadership team in both chambers, coming in, and our freshman members coming to the legislature for the first time, learning where the committee rooms meet and all those things. And so I feel like there's a lot more relaxed environment. We're working just as hard, but we're confident in knowing that we can get the job done after having a year of getting to do that in the legislature. So, one of the things is just trusting our members. We have some really phenomenal people in the House who their constituents, the 40,000 people they represent, pick them for a reason to come to the Capitol and represent them, and just really lean on them and their expertise, because we're going to have some challenges face us this session. That was one of the things in our caucus meeting before we came up for the State of the State. I told our caucus, I said, hey, here's all these problems we know about, but we also know that come March, come April, there's going to be a crisis that we don't even know, and it's going to come. But the men and women that I have the privilege of serving with in the House, I am supremely confident in their abilities to step up and do the right thing for the people of Oklahoma. We've done it time and time again. We're going to do it again this session.
And then the last day of the last session, we'll just say it was a long one. Definitely had some disagreements there. Do you feel like it's a clean slate going into this year?
Well, I would say mostly. The governor did reference the veto overrides in his speech today, so there's that. But I would say, look, that's policy disagreement. It's not personal. We met the Friday before Christmas, the governor, the pro tem, and myself with our chiefs of staff over at the governor's mansion, and kind of talked about priorities going into the session. And I'm very confident we're going to be able to work together and get some good things done this session.
It's going to be a good one. All right, Speaker Hilbert, thank you so much for talking with us today. I'm going to go ahead and send it back to you guys at the desk.
All right, Haley, thank you. And Alex Cameron's been covering the state capitol here in Oklahoma for a long time. He's in Washington, D.C. now, of course, covering the national side of things. And Alex, did you listen into his speech today? What did you think of it? Was there anything that surprised you? What was your takeaway from it?
Yeah, I did listen to the entire speech. And, I guess I was not really surprised by it. There was very little reference to, federal policy, which again doesn't really surprise me. I'm not surprised he focused, on his achievements and what he wants to try and get done in the last year. I thought it was a relatively bold agenda that he's laid out, and so we'll see. We'll leave that up to you guys back in Oklahoma to cover that. But he has tried throughout his 2 terms to work with the administrations here in Washington, D.C., whether it's the first Trump administration, the Biden administration, now Trump 2. He, may recall there was no Oklahoma office here in Washington until he took office. He set up sort of a liaison's office here with the express aim of working with the administration, whichever administration is in place, to try and advance Oklahoma efforts. And so, that's been something that's been going on relatively quietly behind the scenes. So they have tried to work hard with the federal partners, but in the end, you heard him say today that the federal government's not a reliable partner. And so we've got to do some things on ourselves. And that sort of led him to talk about the efforts to try and curb the expenses of Medicaid, which, under passage of the One Big Beautiful Bill definitely is going to cost states like Oklahoma more, states that expanded Medicaid. And he, ends up as we all heard, asking voters to reconsider what they approved, just over just over 5 years ago, or in fall of 2020, in the expansion of Medicaid. So, we'll see if there's an appetite for doing that, but he certainly can see that that is going to be a costly issue for Oklahoma going forward unless some changes are made. I suspect that our delegation here, again, they probably weren't watching the speech, but they have people who were, and they may be pleased with some of the things that were in the speech. That probably, the fact that he's embracing the Trump accounts and hoping to get the legislature to agree to put more money into that, with $250 from the state on top of the $1,000 that the federal treasury plans to put in for all newborns. So, that's something that people like to see, and, very upbeat speech for Oklahoma. But right now, our federal delegation is very focused right now on trying to get the government reopened and try to bring down costs here. So, you'll see. They don't always intersect well, as Scott and I talk about every week. But the governor certainly has his reasons to be skeptical of how the federal government can help the state of Oklahoma.
Alex, I was going to ask you about the Trump account thing, because that was one thing that really had a national connection impact as well. So, Alex, thank you for joining us for a few minutes. And I know they're dealing with the partial government shutdown. Not sure what time the House is going to vote. Alex, do you know what time the House is going to vote on the partial government shutdown to refund the government?
Yeah, it's not clear right now. Looks like they're going to try and pass a rule to get this, which is another complication. So the actual vote to end the shutdown may not happen until tomorrow. But so trying to follow it all, and there are things changing by the minute. But it looks like the actual vote to end the shutdown may not come until tomorrow.
All right. I know you're following it, so we'll check in with you later, too. Thanks for taking a few minutes today and following what's happening back here at Oklahoma as well. Let's go back over to Haley Hetrick. She has some more coverage for us, and I've been told it has to do with the medical marijuana thing.
Yes, I'm here with State Senator Darrell Weaver, and also the former director of the Bureau of Narcotics. Thanks so much for talking with us today. So the governor has this idea of sending the marijuana issue back to a vote of the people. What did you make of that?
Well, I was pleasantly surprised. I think that when 788 was originally passed, it was actually on the ballot at the same time I was in 2018. And I think that it was meaningful. I think some people think, well, maybe your grandmother's got cancer and let them do marijuana. But I think the expansion of and how it was written really exposed Oklahoma to a real problem. And that was, we're producing more marijuana than anybody in the nation, and it's going outside the boundaries of Oklahoma. Now, there's good actors among the business, and there's bad actors. I mean, the bad actors are people that are not going to follow the rules and not going to follow what the state wants them to do or any regulations like that. And it's also a very violent world. I was in that world for many, many years. So I think what the governor has seen, and what many of us in this body and many of our citizens have said, that wait a second, we maybe need to readdress this. So I think the proper thing to do, if in fact we need to, is what the governor's doing. And I totally support, put it before the vote of the people and see what they want to do now that they know what's turned out. Because we didn't know really the outcome of that in 788, but we surely know now.
If it went back to a vote of the people, how different would you anticipate that vote turning out?
Well, it's hard to say at this point. You know, there's going to be a lot of money pumped into that, for and against. A lot of money for. That's happened in 2018. I mean, there's people out there that really want that because there's a lot of money to be made in that business. So I think it'll be interesting how it's presented. But I think just many Oklahomans out there saying, wait a minute, I mean, it seems to me it's a little bit out of control here. And I think that I anticipate that, and we'll see, but I anticipate they may reel it back.
Can you just explain to the average Oklahoman, how would that even come about? How do you send a state question back to the people?
Yeah. Well, state questions can be really one of two ways, and that is either through petition, where you get the signatures, and you hear that a lot. You get so many, they have to be certified, and you put it on. But we actually can send a petition through the legislature. We can say, listen, we want the citizens of Oklahoma to decide what we're going to do with this issue. So it's really a pretty comfortable spot for a legislator, because we're saying, hey, 788, because we've had people that want to come up in this body legislatively and statutorily up in 788, and I've always said that was the will of the people. So you have to be very careful. If they voted for something as a unit and it passed, then we have to be careful in this body. But by what the governor wants to do and taking that before, again, the vote of the people, I think then they have another chance. And if they voted into law, then we live with what they voted for and we go forward.
Outside of that state question, is there any other legislative initiatives you have or you would like to see dealing with, you talked about those bad actors, dealing with kind of cracking down on some of that behavior?
Yeah, I mean, it's very difficult because it's hard, having been in enforcement for nearly 3 decades. You know, who are really the bad actors and who are the good actors, you know? I mean, sometimes you sure don't want a good person in that business to be harmed in anything you do. But it's very difficult to do. But, I mean, I personally want something done with fentanyl. I have a bill out there that's sitting in, actually I think it's on the Senate floor, and we're just one vote away from being law, and it would actually educate our young people in Oklahoma. I had a fentanyl bill a few years ago that made it, if it's traceable on any product, then it'd be manufacturing, which is very important because they're lacing these pills, and kids and people, all of Oklahomans, they're losing loved ones because of this. So I'm really going to push that hard. I want to get that over the finish line.
All right, quite a few options out there. We'll see how it all turns out. Senator Weaver, thank you so much for talking with us. Go ahead and send it back to you guys at the desk.
All right, thanks, Haley. I was just, the one thing we've missed this whole time we've been out here is try to get a pollster on and talk about what we need to know.
Yeah, no, that's an interesting angle to this, because we've heard from lawmakers, we've heard from others, but we haven't heard from a pollster.
And Kyle Lovelace, who's one of our top pollsters and that I go to a lot in calling your expertise. You've worked with the governor's office. Your firms have worked with the governor's office. On 788, if 788, the medical marijuana bill, were on the ballot in November, just going back in time, with everything we know, would it pass?
Probably not, because the definition of medical marijuana has been extremely exploded. And that it was on every dispensary, was on every corner, and you could see billboards saying, don't need a doctor's note, pull in here. So I think looking back, I don't think it would pass.
There are other things that the governor has said about putting on the ballot, the Medicaid issue. Some of the things that the governor is talking about are legacy issues, and we were just remarking a few minutes ago, this governor is out of a job, right, in a little bit, and you've worked with them for a long time. And there are rumors running amok that with that NGA, National Governors Association chairmanship, he has a national platform. There may be another election for the big job in about a little over 2 years. Are any of the rumors about Kevin Stitt interested in running for president true? And number two, he won't give us an answer. But number two, has he got the profile as a governor of a red state in an open Republican primary in a couple of years to actually be a player?
Well, I just look back. I'm a student of history. We look back at Governor Clinton when he was governor next state over. He didn't really have a national profile until he gave a couple of speeches. So, Governor Stitt, with the National Governors Association, has raised his national profile, and he has a resume to back it up. I don't know, and I don't think that there's any plans for him running for president, but I think he could meet those. He checks a lot of boxes, and so there's probably going to be people that want him to do it.
I have a question about, this is his final year in office. How is he going to leave office in terms of an approval rating? Former Governor Mary Fallin left with a pretty low approval rating. So how is he going to be seen by the people of Oklahoma, and will that have an impact on the gubernatorial race coming up?
Well, I think one thing that you've seen that's a little bit differentiates Governor Stitt from Governor Fallin. When Governor Fallin left office, the economy was really, really bad. The economy right now is doing pretty well. And Governor Stitt also, I don't know if you've noticed, but his political action arm has been running ads and doing things, staying visible in Oklahoma politics, where Governor Fallin didn't do as much. And so when you run commercials and you run social media, you're wanting to leave your reputation high. And right now, the governor, whether people outside this building don't know it, but he is one of the most popular, if not the most popular, Republican statewide officials in Oklahoma right now.
Now, we should let people know that Kyle and his firm, they're working with former Speaker Charles McCall. There's a hot race between Speaker McCall, Attorney General Gittner Drummond. We just saw former Senator Mike Mazie, an old colleague of yours. Chip Keating is in the race. Who's going to win that?
Well, I mean, I'm definitely biased, but I'm also, like I said, a student of history. I will say this: you know who's gonna win? Ad buyers, because right now with everybody, we just had the quarterly reports come out. People are putting in. Chip Keating put in $2 million. Another person put in $1 million. It's going to probably be the Republican primary and runoff. At least $45-50 million going to be spent. And so, of course, right now you've seen polling trending. McCall has taken the lead. We haven't seen any public polling in a while. Drummond, if you would have asked people a year ago, he was at 52-53% of the Republican primary. He's now in the 20s. So that's a 30% drop. So, and Keating is just getting started by putting in $2 million of his own money. So it is going to be, there's three big heavyweights. I would like to say Ali Frazier, but it's more like WrestleMania. So that's what it's going to be.
We're in February now. A lot can change. I mean,
absolutely.
With governor's races, sometimes a lot of Oklahomans are not even paying attention to it. They don't really even know who's running for governor. So what can change over the next few months? What's going to have to happen to really move the race one way or the other?
Well, I mean, you've seen it like a couple months ago. No one was really paying attention either until there was an ad cutting a banana.
Right.
And that's something that grabs somebody's attention. So I would say that ad did shift a little bit because Speaker McCall got a lot of attention from social conservatives across the state that weren't paying attention to his record, and now they did then. So you can see how things are fluid, but it's basically you have who's going to be dancing when the music stops to get into the runoff, and so you got three main heavyweights, and anybody can go in. Right now, if I had to scope it, I'd say right now you're going to have McCall and Drummond, but Keating's coming on strong.
Can you explain it for some people that may be watching right now that don't know how it works? You have to win a certain amount to avoid a runoff. But a lot of people say there's going to be a runoff.
Well, because there are people that are doing professional campaigns, even like Senator Mazie, Jake Merrick, a former radio host. Then there's a couple other people that are, they haven't got a professional campaign.
Right.
But each one of those, when you put them on a ballot, they're going to get 2, 3, 4, 5% even. And so with that many people statistically, it takes a Mount Everest type of effort to avoid a runoff. And if you don't get 50% plus one vote, then you have to go to a runoff, and it takes the top two people. And so that's where right now, like I said, I would say McCall and Drummond.
Okay. We're going to be watching it definitely over the next few months. You got anything else, Scott?
I do want to ask one quick question.
Go right ahead. We got plenty of time.
Here's the question. We're engaging in public policy debates today, and are the commercials going to be about public policy debates that actually end people? Are we going to be doing culture war? What is the whole fall or the spring primary in Oklahoma and November culture war versus public policy?
I think it's a mixture of both, and the candidates that do it right are the ones that are going to do better in the polls and do better at the election box. Because if you just do culture war issues, that doesn't get you over the hump. You have to have the hook of how this affects your daily life. So you can have the banana ad, you can have the boy in the girls' restroom, changing room. You can have those ads. That's good to have. That's what gets you resonate with the social conservatives. What also gets you across the line is you got to give your vision of why I'm going to cast my vote for you. Why do I feel comfortable you being in the governor's mansion, and why do I think you're the one to do it? And so that's why you have to have the melding of both cultural and social issues and economic.
So less banana, more banana bread.
I would say keep cutting those bananas.
Okay.
With peanut butter. That's the best way to eat a banana. All right, Kyle, thanks so much for being here. We appreciate it.
I'm glad to do it.
Thanks for
Anytime.
coming by.
I think we have Emery Bryant standing by. I'm not sure if he's ready yet, but Emery's has some more coverage for us.
That's right, Jonathan. I'm here with Representative Scott Fettgatter, who is the Tribal Affairs, you tell me the title, the Tribal Affairs Liaison?
Well, yeah, leader of tribal and external affairs. That's correct. I also chair the Joint Committee on Tribal Government.
Okay. You're in a great position to review what the governor said in there about the tribes. What are your thoughts?
Well, I think it was an opportunity for the governor on his way out the door to maybe try to correct some of his path that he's had into, tearing down the relationships the state of Oklahoma has worked hard to develop and build over the years with our tribal partners. However, he doubled down and he decided to continue to tear down by stating that the U.S. Supreme Court had essentially divided our state into a tribal nation and the state of Oklahoma, which he knows is absolutely not the case. All it did was it reaffirmed those boundaries that were given to people by the U.S. government through the U.S. Constitution I'm just trying to think of the words, I'm so frustrated with it right now, to give them a place to live and self-govern their people.
The governor pushes back whenever the word reservation is used, and that Supreme Court ruling, which many people thought was the final word on it. But the state government continues to push back at the governor's behest. So is there some sort of legislative, is there something the legislature might do to bridge this divide?
With a new governor, we might be able to have those conversations. However, with the existing governor, anything that comes across his desk that the legislature does to try to help strengthen and build those tribal relationships, he automatically vetoes just because he thinks it's a tribal situation. We have a gaming deduction bill that deals with people who go to tribal casinos. But the governor vetoes it every year, not even understanding that it's not about the citizens of the tribe. It's about citizens across Oklahoma who are being unfairly taxed. And so he just vetoes anything that comes across that remotely sounds like we're trying to do good work and good faith with our tribal partners. This morning, I believe, I heard Devon Energy is leaving the state of Oklahoma. That's a big news line, and we hate to hear that today. The one thing I can assure you today, there are 39 tribes that contribute billions of dollars to the economy in the state of Oklahoma, and they will never leave our state to go to Houston.
Okay. Thank you very much for taking a minute to talk to us. Thank you very much. 10 years in the legislature. Been around the block a few times, done a few of those budgets, good and bad, in good and bad times.
Been through a lot of interesting times, for sure.
Thank you very much for joining us. So the reaction from legislators and tribal leaders seems to be very similar. They're very frustrated by what the governor has said about tribal relationships and what he wants to see going forward as far as the relationship between the state of Oklahoma and these 39 tribes that we have. Back to you guys.
All right, Emery Bryan, live for us. Thank you. And as he was saying that, we got a press release from a Republican member of the House, Scott Fettgatter, and a quote said, "With the leaders of many of our Native American tribes looking on from the House gallery, the governor made a mockery of our state's unique history and the valued partnership our state has had with our tribal citizens for over 100 years. So, this is something he's been talking about for several years. In eastern Oklahoma, we see it a lot more with the repercussions of the McGirt decision when it comes to prosecuting some crimes and things like that. Another aspect of this is something that neighboring states have done is sports betting, and that doesn't look like it would be anything this session at least, and a lot of the tribes are waiting for the next governor in this because Governor Kevin Stitt wants it to be an open market to where anybody can come in, a DraftKings, a FanDuel, and do it themselves, whereas the tribes would not run it. So, I mean, is there anything to repair with this, or is it just move on for the next governor when it comes to tribal relations?
Move on for the next governor on tribal relations. We're already seeing the conversations. You don't hear that from former Speaker McCall. You haven't heard that from the Attorney General. I haven't heard anything yet with Mr. Keating. Mr. Mazie, I think, is not going to be taking up that mantle either. So I think this goes out with the state administration.
There are some concerns, though, from some, and the governor has brought this up, that the McGirt decision will expand to other things. So when the decision was made, it had to do with the Major Crimes Act, for example, specifically that. The governor has expressed concerns that, it can go into taxes. And some of the tribal members have said, well, we have the right to tax people that live on our reservation. There are a lot of Oklahomans in Oklahoma that are not tribal citizens that live on a reservation. So could that expand in the future? Could taxes be something where, I live in Tulsa, I pay taxes to the Muskogee Nation instead of the state of Oklahoma?
It's a great question, and I think what we're going to shift this fall, or the spring rather, we're going to shift that conversation into the next Attorney General. Mm-hmm. And I think that's just something that you'll be seeing in both the Democrat and the Republican side. Those are the folks that are going to be real. This is a judicial issue. That's the state's top legal officer, and I think our hints are going to be coming from that particular race. And I don't think we'll have any going forward. It's going to be the AG's game, not a governor's game.
Okay. And we are running out of time here. We're going to continue for about 10 minutes or so. It looks like the Democrats have a response right now, and they're having a live press conference. We would love to listen into that.
Education.
And see what they have to say about the governor's speech today.
Thought would lead public education, that would have been Ryan Walters. By making the state superintendent an appointment position by the governor really only caters more to partisan politics and gets away from the accountability of the people, and instead doing what the governor wants. In healthcare, again, no real plan to improve outcomes. And I want to remind the governor that Oklahomans are the ones who passed Medicaid expansion. They demanded that we do something for the hundreds of thousands of Oklahomans who are uninsured, and to make sure that our hospital doors stay open and our hospitals stay whole. They demanded more access, and the impact of Medicaid cuts, should he get what he wants by putting a state question on the ballot and undoing Medicaid expansion, nearly 300,000 Oklahomans will lose their health insurance. And understand that 49% of those who receive Medicaid in this expansion population are children, who, by the way, can't go to work, can't fill out work requirement forms, and these folks live in rural Oklahoma. We know many of these healthcare rural facilities operate with losses on services, meaning they are providing the services and not getting reimbursements back, and over half are at risk of closing. It's unacceptable. The governor clearly has a misunderstanding, or so disconnected to what everyday folks are going through that he doesn't understand what's happening in healthcare across the state. The economic challenges that we're facing right now in Oklahoma, like I mentioned earlier, Oklahomans are having more of a difficulty keeping up with everyday living expenses. All throughout the interim, every person standing here today has talked to folks across the state, from the House Democratic Caucus, listening to people about how high their insurance is when it comes to home insurance, health care, utility prices that continue to go up, and there is no mention of lowering costs in the governor's State of the State speech. Just this morning, Devon Energy announced moving their headquarters to Houston, Texas, after the announcement of a merger with Coterra. Not only are we losing those high-paying jobs in Oklahoma, this highlights how we lose companies with Oklahoma founders because we are not investing in the things that matter, like education and healthcare. Oklahomans are not asking for an endowment fund. They're asking for investment in that actually support their families. The celebration of cutting jobs of state employees is offensive. Because not only are you celebrating folks losing their jobs, you're celebrating the inability for Oklahomans to get the services that they need. Those state employees deploy those services all across our state. He touted tax cuts to the wealthiest Oklahomans, estimating a loss of $1.6 billion in revenue. That's enough money to get Oklahoma's public education system out of that 50th ranking. Yep. We could actually put money into our public schools as opposed to giving money to those who least need it. It would also get us out of the last in the region ranking for public education funding.
And that is Cindy Munson, the House Minority Leader, a Democrat that is running for governor of the state of Oklahoma. They're giving the Democrats' response. And we weren't able to listen to all of that, but Haley, you talked to some Democratic lawmakers. What were they telling you about the governor's speech?
I think they had a lack of concern, a concern at his lack of talking about affordable housing and talking about public education, both things that they say is what they're really hearing from constituents. They didn't like his talk about the private school vouchers or the private school tax credits. They hear just a lot of concerns about the lack of funding in those two areas. I know we talked to Minority Leader Julia Kurt, who said, we need affordable housing. She's run bills on it in the past that have not made it across the finish line, but they're really talking about the Oklahomans in that bottom echelon of the tax bracket that just can't afford just, everyday things right now.
When it comes to education, I know they came out with their education platform last week. One of them was to put a tax on vapes as a way to fund. Part of it was to remove the $250 million cap on that, just get rid of it completely.
Yes.
So is there bipartisan support for those things? Probably certain elements of it, no, but some of it, yes.
I think certain elements. I think there's a split right now on the tax credit. Republicans want to either remove the cap or kind of build the cap up. It will stop at $250 million, which is what we're hitting this year. Democrats, on the other hand, want the program to go away just completely. We've also seen another idea. I know Representative Andy Fugate is looking at a millionaire's tax. It would be just a small tax on any millionaires in the state of Oklahoma, and that money would all go to public education. He even said he doesn't know if that will resonate with his Republican counterparts. So I think there's certain things that they agree on. Everyone agrees on this idea of literacy. I think that's the one thing that we're seeing bipartisan support on. But I think when it comes to anything dealing with funding with education, there's just not really a consensus there.
Yeah, in the Representative Fugate, that was modeled after Massachusetts, right? Which is a very blue state, which may not be popular in a place like Oklahoma, Scott. Go ahead.
Quick question. You were here that last day.
I was. I was here for most of it.
D-Day.
I did have to go to sleep at some point around midnight.
Explain to viewers that may not know, what does D-Day mean?
Yeah, why don't we talk about the very last day and all of the love that was breaking. I say that, I'm joking. All the love that broke out the last day. It's like burnt toast. Can we still smell it?
I mean, I think it depends who you ask.
Okay.
I asked the pro tem, and he said, no, we're on a clean slate. I mean, he also talked about that was kind of the building point of when the House and Senate really came together. They had no other option but to band together in those final, we say final hours, it was almost a 12-hour span there, but they really had to band together, get those veto overrides done, and just finish out that session.
And fire a mental health director.
Correct.
And did all kinds of stuff.
All the things.
Right.
But you heard the speaker say, we're good, but the governor brought up the veto overrides in the State of the State address. So.
And we couldn't help but notice the speaker was having quite a chuckle when that was going on, right?
It's always a tough position to be in when you're sitting behind the governor during that, because everyone's just staring at you.
You have to watch your face.
Yes. It's almost like you just have to stay neutral the whole time.
The pro tem and the speaker didn't stand up and rip the speech.
Yes.
I guess that's a good sign.
That's a good sign.
That's
right?
good, too. Haley, you cover this every single day. Some Oklahomans, they check in here and there. What do you think the long-term message is going to be, and what can people look forward to this session, and what do you think are going to be the big things that come out of this session?
There's a lot of talk, and this is kind of a vague statement and a vague idea, but there's a lot of talk about prosperity in the state. I mean, he talked a lot about people coming in, people coming over from Texas. How do we bring more people in? How do we ensure that those people that come in don't leave again? So I think
not affordability.
Well, yes.
Republicans don't say that, right?
I know. I'm
right.
like, it depends who you ask on that issue, but I think it's just going to talk. It's going to be a lot about prosperity, and the governor talked with me a lot about building on that momentum and building on things. Literacy is going to be a huge thing. Everyone I've asked about that says the same thing. They say we want to increase literacy rates. I say how? There hasn't been a concrete. I know we saw the state chamber's plan. They're still working out all the logistics of what that actually looks like when it comes down to actual policy, but I know everyone is focused on early intervention and literacy rates. So I think those are going to be the two things. The governor also talked a lot about welfare. I think that's something new that we always talk about, but it hasn't been one of the big sticking points in years. So
you know what else I didn't hear about? Excuse me for interrupting.
No, that's okay.
I didn't hear anything about State Farm.
You know what?
Property, that's such J.C. Hallman, OK Watch, has been killing it with these stories on property insurance rates. I didn't hear anything there.
I didn't either. And that's, it's something that I know I've heard a lot from Democratic lawmakers. Have not heard a ton from Republicans. I know there's some legislation in the works to kind of combat that issue from Democrats' perspective, especially over in the House. So we'll see how that works out. But yeah, that was something that we definitely didn't hear about that I think
a lot of Oklahomans are dealing with right now.
Yeah, we didn't really hear much about ICE either,
Right.
which was a big thing. And there were a few things that we thought he would have talked about, but he didn't. And then maybe some things vice versa as well. We're running out of time, but if you've been with us for the past 2 or 3 hours, we appreciate you watching, and we're going to continue to follow this. You're going to be here every day covering the Capitol, both News on 6 and News 9. And Scott, we appreciate your insight. Tell people where they can see more of your coverage.
Yeah, we're just everywhere in Oklahoma City and Tulsa. Every Saturday we do Hot Seat, where we take, a shorter version for television, then the long version on both News 9, News on 6, and then Sunday morning we do DC Debrief, where Alex Cameron and I laugh about what happens in DC. Not really, we just have a good time with it. I was going to ask him a few minutes ago about anything going on. No, they're shut down. So that's what's good. Nothing new. The standard operating procedure. And then Your Vote Counts, which is on both of the programs on Sunday morning, where we take two sides of an issue and try to have some fun and let people know what's going on.
And I have more coverage on YouTube as well. Thank you for joining us here on this digital studio. Have a great day.